Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and we got an interesting one tonight. We're going to be diving into a topic some of you may be familiar with. I suppose many of you will not. And this is a program known as the Gateway Program or the Gateway Experience and how it's tied to the Stargate project, a project that was started by the US Army in 1978, in which was interested in psychic abilities used for military purposes. And yes, for those already connecting the dots, this is the basis for the Hollywood movie Men Who Stare at Goats. And so tonight we're going to be touching on a wide variety of topics. These will include U.S. Army intelligence groups interested in paranormal and psychic abilities. We'll be looking at remote viewing and astral projection, which is the central focus of both of these projects. We'll also be discussing aliens and UFOs, as ironically, they tend to come up over and over again regarding these topics. And when people go out of their bodies and encountering these energetic entities, of which I'm sure you already can guess what my opinion is on those. We'll be talking about a gentleman named Robert Monroe, who is sort of the leading remote viewer of the Stargate project, and how this led into him writing a series of books and founding what is still in existence today, the Monroe Institute, where they teach people how to remote view and astral project in efforts to gain access and information to non-local events. And so we're also going to be touching on the Esalen Institute. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Esalen Institute, this is sort of the leading institute in Big Sur, California. It was very prominent in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in regards to sort of new age spirituality and whatnot. We see Aldous Huxley was one of the early speakers, Timothy Leary, of course, Terrence McKenna. If you've seen some of his long form lectures and stuff, he was a house speaker there at the Esalen Institute. And so we're going to be talking about, and I don't want to spend too much focus on it, but I have a little section here of the book that I want to highlight in regards to during the Cold War. Interestingly enough, the Esalen Institute, due to their efforts to utilize remote viewing, i.e. Russell Targ, who we're going to be talking about, they were granted access to actually go to Russia and work with various people, the Soviet Union, that were also interested in remote viewing. Now, of course, we were told that there was no contact and stuff because we were in a Cold War at the time, but turns out, in fact, they were in contact, and the work that they were doing at the Esalen Institute led eventually into the US Army forming the Stargate project. And so some of these papers have been declassified, which I'm going to share with you guys. So if you want to read in detail, you'll be able to exactly what they were doing and how they believed it to work. And so much of our conversation today is going to be tied with New Age spirituality, because many of the promoters of remote viewing and astral projection believe it to be part of our simulation in regards to the way the universe works. They believe, they subscribe to what's called the simulation hypothesis. I have a book over there that goes into detail about it, but we're going to see that come up over and over again today during our conversation. And so this is going to get tied into the work that Robert Monroe did with what's called the Hemi-sync. And this is about using binaural beats and electrical frequencies to synchronize the hemispheres of the brain. The corpus callosum is that which connects the right and left hemisphere. And so this then allows people further expansion of their consciousness and altered experiences. So we're going to be touching on all this different stuff. I really don't have a huge monologue because I have so much content that once I can get through most of it and kind of bring you guys up to date on the names and the main players in regards to these topics, we're going to then watch an interview with a man named Sean Webb, who is participating at the Monroe Institute, knows Robert Monroe, and is a big promoter of these whole remote viewing and out-of-body experiences, astral projecting and whatnot. So that's going to be almost an hour-long conversation that we're going to watch and go through during the second half of today's video. So we're going to be here for a minute. It's probably going to be a pretty long stream, but I tell you, it's very fascinating. So smash that like. I want to give a special thanks to a few people. First one goes out to AC. He was very generous, and before the stream even started, he gifted 5 COTEL crew memberships. So thank you so much, AC. God bless you, brother. And look, I got your books right here. The next stream we're going to be doing is on a sponsored stream regarding Freemasonry and its roles in the American, French, and Bolshevik Revolution. Interestingly, central player in all three. And then I'll be diving into 2 of AC's sponsored streams. I apologize, AC. The last month and a half has been crazy with school and then the holidays and everything. So I will be doing your sponsored streams. I promise you that. And so we'll be doing that. And in addition, because we'll be talking a little bit about aliens and remote viewing today, I want to say, if anybody would be generous enough, one of the topics I have not done that I would love to do a deep dive on is Father Spirit and Bailey's book, The UFO Deception. And so if you would like to be a generous supporter of my work in this stream, I would advocate anybody who'd be interested to sponsor a stream on the UFO deception, providing an Eastern Orthodox perspective on UFOs, because not only are going to be prominent in today's conversation, we see the beginnings of this being utilized for a sort of collective effort to form a world government one way or another. So I would love to do a deep dive on Father Spirit and Bailey's book. If that interests some of you guys and you would like to support the work here, I would be very, very happy if somebody were to sponsor a stream on this. And then we could do a deep dive. I can cover the whole thing, and we can give a sort of theological perspective on these extraterrestrial entities, because they're going to come up today in people remote viewing and having sexual attacks, and how frequent UFO or alien encounters tend to be sexual in nature. So, very interesting there. And I have some theories that I'll put forth for you guys today. So, this is what we're going to be getting into. Smash that like I said. We are going to be having a wild time tonight. Lots and lots of information. So sit back, relax. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season and happy New Year's to all you guys. Welcome to 2024. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. I'm sure this is going to be a year you'll never forget. Certainly with things that are happening around the world, and certainly with the U.S. election, I believe, what was it, like 60% of the world is going to have major elections in 2024. And if some of the ideas that I've speculated on, as well as others in the ortho community, are anywhere close to being true, it's going to be a wild ride for sure. So anyways, just want to say that. And yeah, blessed feast to all you Orthodox out there. I know many of you guys are Orthodox. And so blessed feast. I'm on the new calendar. So we have celebrated the birth of Christ. Christ is born. Glorify him, to all my orthos out there. So let's just take care of a little bit of housekeeping before we even get into this monologue, because I want to move straight into my sort of small monologue today, right into some articles, right into some prepared sources for our video, because like I said, there's a lot of reading, and I have, as you know, I actually have the declassified document with page 25. You see, there's this huge controversy when the CIA declassified aspects of the Gateway program, that interestingly enough, page 25 was missing, which detailed sort of out-of-body experiences. I have that for you guys. I will share that link with you in the live chat. So if anybody wants to watch, or I'm sorry, not watch, but read the article for yourself, because we're not going to be reading it. It's like 30 pages, 29 or 30 pages. So I'm not going to read all that to you today. I have a couple articles that are going to sort of summarize that research. So we'll be reading those. And then after everything, we'll be watching a video of a gentleman that's going around promoting this and promoting people to expand their consciousness and participate in various remote viewing practices. So that's what we'll be discussing. But before we get there, I just want to tell everybody, if you would like to support my work, one of the best things you can do is become a website member. And like AC, you could become a premium website member, of which we meet twice a month. And you'll have access to the fitness groups, where they're the first Mondays of every month. Unfortunately, some people weren't going to make it last night, so we've moved the first fitness meeting to January 8th. So if one of your resolutions is to get fit, to get strong, to take more serious care of your body, join our fitness membership. It's a group of like-minded people, mostly all Orthodox. And I told you guys before, I'll be partnering with Father Moses McPherson and hopefully Father Michael Butler, and we'll be providing a Orthodox symposium on the last Sunday before Great Lent, where we will be laying out how exactly you take care of your body, bodybuilding, powerlifting during the fast. And so that will be free for anybody who's interested. All my fitness members will be obviously sent all the information to join that private Zoom meeting. But if you also would like to just have access to sort of private exclusive content, for $5 a month, you can get access to some of these videos here, of which I'll be posting a new one this week. So if you would like to support my work, one of the best things you can do is come over here to the davidpatrickcarey.com/register page and sign up. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you really want to be a part of the in-group, become a premium member. I promise you that it is worth it. I promise you, you're going to appreciate the gentleman that you're going to meet in that group. Also, if anybody would like to sign up for a one-on-one session, you can do so with this link right here. And I'd be happy to discuss anything and everything you would like in a private Zoom meeting with just you and me. Obviously, I ask that you don't record it. I'm not going to record you, and we can then get down into the nitty-gritty of whatever topic you would like to discuss. You can do that there. And also, if you would like to sponsor a stream, of which I'm requesting somebody sponsor a stream on the UFO deception, I would love to do a full overview and breakdown of Father Spirit and Bailey's great book, The UFO Deception, and provide an orthodox theological perspective on really what I believe we're going to encounter in the very near future. Obviously, the Great Reset is at hand. We've been talking about this since 2020. We are now 4 years into the Great Reset. The CBDCs are going to be just around the corner. And I suppose by 2030, they will have the entire framework in place. So discussing UFOs as a potential catalyst for the global citizens to support the efforts to form a central global government. I think the UFOs and aliens are going to be central to that. So if you guys would like to do that, please sponsor a stream on the UFO deception. If you have a different topic, feel free. You can sponsor a stream. I'll be doing, like I said, we have 3 sponsored streams coming up. Freemasonry and basically the revolutionary spirit will be my next stream. And then I'll be diving into AC has purchased 2 sponsored streams, one on religion and nothingness. This is going to be focusing on Buddhism, and then all the world and icon, which is going to be more about Sufism. So those are going to be coming up too. And again, I want to thank AC for all his support. Not only a premium website member, not only gifting memberships here on the stream, not only sending in super chats, but sponsoring streams. Thank you so much, AC. Really appreciate you, brother. God bless you and your family. So anyways, with that being said, also, if you are interested, feel free to get some merch. We got merch here on YouTube at the YouTube store, as well as on the website. We got a shop there on the website. So if that's something you'd be interested in, please check that out. Would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so now getting into today's topic, like I said, we're going to be covering a lot of information. You may be hearing some names and ideas maybe you're not familiar with. That's totally okay. But we'll be discussing first and foremost the Stargate project. And the Stargate project is a project that got going from the US Army at Fort Meade, Maryland. And it was in conjunction with the Defense Intelligence Agency and the SRI International, which is the sort of scientific research, or the Stanford Research Institute, which is where Russell Targ was working. And this is why Esalen is going to play such a central role. Esalen is in Big Sur, California, and it's kind of just south there on Highway 1 from the Bay Area. And so many of the people that were participating in some of this early research, which catalyzed into the Stargate project, was going on at Esalen. I'm going to read this to you again. There's like multiple pages. There's a whole section in this book. It's actually titled, kid you not, Sex with Angels. And are they the angels that you and I believe in? I think not. And so it's talking about non-local mind, UFOs, and the end of ordinary history. And so at the Esalen Institute, towards the 60s and early 70s, they were experimenting with remote viewing based on their beliefs, Russell Targ's beliefs, especially regarding quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement and all this different stuff. And so this has led to research in which the CIA became very interested. And then people at the Esalen Institute began to partner with various entities in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. And they also did experiments. One experiment in the book, which we're not going to be reading about, was in which a remote viewer was at the house at Big Sur on the Esalen Institute. And another gentleman was somewhere, I believe, in Moscow, Russia. And the experiment was to figure out what exactly the person in Russia was holding. And so the remote viewer was able to go into an altered state of consciousness. And according to the book, he was able to know that they were holding a little elephant, a little gray elephant. And so some of these stories about remote viewing and going into altered states, this is why the CIA became very interested in what they're doing at the Esalen Institute, because they thought, well, if people can go into altered states of consciousness and have sort of out-of-body experiences and be able to observe actions in real time around the world, well, this could be quite handy in regards to military intelligence, finding secret bases, nuclear projects, that type of thing. So the CIA eventually became very interested in this. And this is where the US Army then created the Stargate project. The Stargate project is going to then utilize a gentleman named Robert Monroe. And Robert Monroe was actually a radio host in the United States that had very interesting ideas about altered states of consciousness and claimed that he was going into sleep, these sort of semi-sleep states, and that he was able to then go out of his body and see certain things. And then, according to him, various explanations in regards to the things that he saw were actually true. And so this led to Robert Monroe, once the Stargate project was become defunct, being part of the Gateway program. And the Gateway program is about passing through this gateway in which they can then remote view and astral project. So we're going to be reading all about that. But Robert Monroe was also important because he developed these theories in regards to what's called Hemi-sync, some of the things that you guys might be familiar with. And this is the utilization of binaural beats and putting beats at various frequencies, and how this would be able to alter consciousness, put people in out of body states and such. But not everybody is susceptible to these as other people are. This is part of their stuff. And we have an article by a sort of atheist, skeptical, sort of progressive guy who learned about the release of the Gateway program, read about it, and then wanted to participate. So I think he did. We're going to just look over, not going to read the whole thing, but basically he documented his attempts to participate in it for like 190 some days. And he didn't experience quite the trajectory that some of these other people like Russell Targ, Ingo Swann, Pat Price, Robert Monroe, these types of people. He didn't have the same success. He changed his views from the beginning of being quite skeptical to being less skeptical about it by the end. And so my point of bringing him up is he does have a nice little historical overview in his article. We're not going to read all of his personal experiences, but what is interesting is by the end, like I said, he becomes less skeptical of it. And, our friend Rachel Wilson, she wrote a paper on her Substack, which is very interesting. And we talked about it briefly, I think, in a previous stream. And it's called Hypno-Sissy Porn. And this is a dark, dark rabbit hole that I don't suggest any of you guys go down. But Hypno-Sissy Porn is actually a form of pornography that uses binaural beats and slowly engages in more and more and more extreme forms of pornography, to the point where men who begin to watch this stuff turn into transgender women. And so my point is that the binaural beat stuff, I think, is quite effective. And I think it could be utilized in a more positive way, because their research, I think, is quite successful and quite conclusive that our brains are sort of electromagnetic fields of frequency, and you can sort of synchronize your brain using various frequencies. And one of the interesting things they found in peer-reviewed research is that they can put people in a state of hypnosis using these Hemi-sync binaural beat methods, and that it's more about the electromagnetic than the acoustic, because they tried to do it in ways in which they were not using anything that was related to the electromagnetic currencies, and it was not successful. But they have multiple success stories in which they can put people in a hypnotic state and actually perform surgery on them without anesthetics. So what exactly is going on? Well, maybe we'll come to a better conclusion by the end of the stream. But one of the things I want to highlight before we get into it from an Orthodox Christian perspective is has to do with the noetic realm. And so when people are remote viewing or astral projecting or leaving their body to gain access to various degrees of reality, one of the things that comes in common with many of the articles that we'll read is obviously aliens and UFOs. And so why does that matter, Patrick? Well, obviously, I do not believe in extraterrestrials. I do not believe any entities from the Pleiadians or whatever star seed have ever come here or ever will come here. And because of my biblical bias and my beliefs, I think that demonic entities are actually aliens, or aliens are actually demonic entities. It doesn't matter either way. And so this is going to tie into these sort of erotic experiences that some of these remote viewers have had, which have described even at the Esalen Institute as a sort of possession. And I think that remote viewing and astral projecting is actually quite dangerous spiritually. And it's because Christ incarnated and our bodies are important. And this gets even into transhumanism, where basically the idea is you're only your brain. And in a way, we see these same beliefs in these new age spiritualities that promote these ideas. And so, what I believe as an Orthodox Christian is that people really are encountering these energetic entities, which they describe at the Esalen or they describe in these classified papers. And I believe that they are demons. And I believe that's exactly what's going on. And I wouldn't be surprised if demonic entities would actually show people various insights about the world and reality, because there's also a lot of falsehood. Many claims are made by these people and they turned out to be false, but many have also been claimed and they turned out to be true. So when we watch the interview with a gentleman that's about an hour or so long, he's going to talk about all these success stories. Now, there are many failures as well. But what I think is happening is people are getting into altered states of consciousness and their noetic faculties. Again, the as Orthodox, we believe in the soul, body, and the nous. And the nous is the eye of your heart, the eye of your soul. And this is contains all your noetic faculties. And I think that's what psychedelics do, is they launch us into this noetic realm. The problem is, for many of these people, they have no objective morality, they have no objective worldview. And so how exactly can you test these entities to know if they're beneficent or malevolent? Well, they can't. And so they're going to talk about in the Esalen book angels in these sort of sexual attacks. But again, as an Orthodox Christian, no angelic entity that's working for God, the true God, the one God, the Holy Trinity, is going to sexually attack you or sexually possess you. One of the remote viewers will read just a snippet of which he goes into an altered state and is able to gain access, and yet he is fully erect and he's having a sort of sexual attack. Now, we've talked about pornography and the sexual degeneracy in our culture and how this really is a demonic effort. In Psalms, it states to not give your sexual energy over to women. We have to, as men, keep our focus on God, and then those faithful women will keep their focus on us and help us build families and do what's right on this side of eternity. So UFOs, aliens, erotic encounters, that's going to be something we're going to discuss. Simulation theory, again, we're going to read an overview of this stuff from a person who seems to be very supportive of it. And of course, they believe this is all tied to a simulation hypothesis about the universe, which is actually in the Gateway program written by the CIA. This is towards, I believe, 1983 is the paperwork that got released. And so they claim that basically we live in a simulation, and that what they're able to do through this remote viewing is access the simulation to different parts. And they believe that you can go to different parts of the universe because the whole entire universe is a simulation. Now, I do not believe it's a simulation. I believe it was created by God and that we have free will. And the simulation hypothesis sort of brings about a kind of Maya understanding out of Eastern mysticism, something you'd be familiar with Hinduism and Buddhism and that, like the idea that the real world is a sort of illusion. But simulation really calls into questions aspects of epistemology, your ontology, God, although they're going to be very open that they do believe in a sort of all-inclusive energetic force. It's very abstract, it's not concrete, and it's certainly not personal. And we're going to read the sort of affirmation statement that all the remote viewers had to cite before they could participate in the Stargate, but then also the Gateway program. And it's very interesting because to me, it has very Gnostic elements. It's about, here, let me read it to you real quick, see if I can pull it up, and I'll show you guys this again when I have it all in front of us. But it says, this was the gateway affirmation, they claimed, and that they had to say, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand and to experience and to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and those who follow me. Also, I deeply desire to help in cooperation, the assistance, and the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, experience is equal or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection for any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires. And so, again, coming from a biblical standpoint, well, you get sort of inklings of a connection back to Genesis and the promise of the serpent that made to Eve. And of course, Adam, following Eve, participated in that downfall and wanted to know like God. And so it's very Gnostic in the sense that these people want to know and to understand and to expand. And this is why they promote much of their remote viewing and astral projection research. So I just want to conclude my opening monologue here by highlighting that I think demonic possession, demons inhabiting the body, that I think this is what happens when you open yourself up to these various astral projecting, remote viewing experiences where you sort of become untethered to your body, which interestingly enough, I agree with many of these people. So we're going to read an article as somebody who is a skeptic and sort of, you know, thought all this was a sort of hodgepodge, wishy-washy, new age spiritual stuff. And it is, but at the same time, I think it's actually real and it's actually true in that there's sort of a relationship there that these entities that people encounter and can give them knowledge and insight. Well, where exactly is that leading? And if you're untethered from your body and you're no longer in your body, isn't the goal of demons within our worldview to inhabit your body, to gain access to it? So, I just want to keep that front for everybody. And I know many of you guys are Christians and many of you guys are Orthodox, so you already get it. But demons are not going to be mentioned anywhere in the sort of literature we're going to be reading today. So I do think that this is opening oneself up to demonic activity. I believe the claims of the people that said they participated in this research and they were able to interact with these energetic entities, of which they all believe are incredibly beneficent and give them insights and wisdoms and know things beyond any sort of human capacity, because what they're doing is entering the noetic realm. Where is your imagination, for example? We've talked about this before, that orthodoxy is quite clear that your imagination is the first and forefront of the demonic warfare, the logismy, the mental images, the mental ideas, that your imagination isn't in space and time. And this is how we're made in the image of God. And we can participate in the noetic realm like the angels and demons, but we have physical bodies. And the physical body is not something to be annihilated or done away with, which is obviously part of the transhumanist movement and a sort of new ontology of humankind. So I just want to say that orthodoxy, I think, out of the Christian worldviews, is going to be the only one that can give a better explanation to this stuff, because our understanding of the noetic realm and that we have one foot in it and we also have one foot within space and time. And so as these various practitioners try to exit space and time so they can fully enter the noetic realm, what they're doing is they're accessing something that absolutely is real. They're contacting entities that I believe are absolutely real. The only difference is their desire to know, this sort of Gnostic, spiritual, new age desire, I think opens them up to demonic activity. And I would argue that's essentially what it is. And that's why I believe the intelligence agencies, if you will, even though they claim that they're no longer participating in these programs, I think that's why they were so interested in it. So all that stuff is what. Okay. So, okay. Are we back? We're back. Okay. I don't know, guys. You know how it is whenever we get into some of these topics, weird electronic stuff happens. You know, I ask that the Holy Trinity please look over us, protect us, and allow me to move forward with my transmission today, and that no entities can stop us. So I want to thank Dark Lord in a tutu, throws in $5 New Zealand. Thank you so much, Dark Lord in a tutu. Really appreciate your support. God bless you and Happy New Year's to you. Want to also give a major thank you to Emmanuel. He's been a COTEL crew member for 10 months. 10 months. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. He says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, brother. God bless you and your family. Hope you're doing well. And Thomas Aesthetics throws in $5 and says, just read The Soul After Death by Father Seraphim Rose. Great timing for this stream. He talks a lot about AP, RV, so remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, etc. Yeah, he does. And I have that book right over here, The Soul After Death. So, but if anybody would like to, please sponsor a stream on the UFO deception. I'd love to do a full overview of this book. I don't think there's quite one out there that really encapsulates everything. So I'd love to do a full breakdown of that if you guys are interested. But anyways, Thomas Aesthetics, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And Jessica D throws in £2. Thank you so much, Jessica D, for the support. God bless you. Really appreciate it. And let me just check the Streamlabs and the Dono chat before we get started here so we don't leave anybody out. And then let me go over here to the Dono chat. Nothing on Streamlabs. And Dono chat with Blue Skittle. Thank you so much. Blue Skittle throws in $5. Blue Skittle, don't forget, brother, our fitness meeting is January 8th at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you can make that, please join us, brother. I know you're a member. He throws in $5, no comment. So thank you so much, Blue Skittle, for all your support. I really appreciate that. Okay, so with all that being said, now let's get into today's topic. Where exactly do we start? Well, I think first, let's just for the general framework, maybe we can begin with some of the sources that I have planned here. So here's the Gateway program. This was the Gateway affirmation that I read to you guys in the opening here. And then again, I deeply desire to expand and to experience and to know and to understand and to control. Again, sounds very similar to the promise that the serpent made to Eve. But this is the Monroe Institute of Applied Sciences presents the Gateway program. And this is going to be tied to this institute here, the Monroe Institute, which is obviously founded by Robert Monroe. But before we get all of that, you know, what exactly is the Stargate project that I was trying to introduce to you guys? Well, the Stargate project was a secret US Army unit established in 1978 at Fort Meade, Maryland by the Defense Agency and SRI International, which is the Stanford Research Institute. And that's why we're going to begin with the Stargate, and then we're going to move over to the Esalen book, because this is actually talking about things before the Stargate project, because this gets going in 1978. And some of the stuff I want to read to you from this book is from much earlier. So anyways, the work that they did at Esalen led into this one to investigate the potential for psychic phenomenon in military and domestic intelligence applications. The project and its precursors and sister projects originally went by various code names: Gondola Wish, Stargate, Grill Flame, Central Lane, Project CF, Sunstreak, Scanty, until 1991 when they were consolidated and rechristened as the Stargate Project. The Stargate Project was primarily involved in remote viewing, the purported ability to psychically see events, sites, or information from a great distance. The project was overseen until 1987 by Lieutenant Frederick Holmes, Skip Atwater, and aide and psychic headhunter Major General Albert Stubblebine, and later president of the Monroe Institute. The unit was small scale, comprising of about 15 to 20 individuals, and run out of an old leaky wooden barracks. The Stargate project was terminated and declassified in 1995 after a CIA report concluded that it was never useful in any intelligence operation. Information provided by the program was vague and included irrelevant and erroneous data, and there were suspicions of inter-judge reliability. The program was featured in the 2004 book and 2009 film, both titled The Men Who Stare at Goats, although neither mentions it by name. Now, we're going to be then moving back to this. This is what we're going to be watching towards the second half. And this is Sean Webb. And he looks like this. Okay. Okay. And so here is Sean Webb. He looks like this, and he is a proponent, and he's been working with Monroe at the Monroe Institute, and he's going to then put forth how reliable this stuff is. So of course, we know that Wikipedia is a front for the CIA, so you can't really keep, this isn't gospel. Let's just put it that way. But it's interesting for quick overviews and providing sort of, tidbits of information. One of the few things I want to highlight here before we get into the Esalen reading is that Information in the United States on psychic research in some foreign countries was poorly detailed, based mostly on rumor and innuendo for secondhand and tertiary reporting, attributed to both reliable and unreliable disinformation sources from the Soviet Union. Now, as I'll be reading to you guys, of course, at the Esalen, with the help of the CIA, they were in fact working with the Soviet Union. The CIA and the DIA decided they should investigate and know as much about it as possible. Various programs were approved yearly and refunded accordingly. Reviews were made semi-annually at the Senate and House Select Committee level. Work results were reviewed, and remote viewing was attempted, and the results being kept secret from the viewer. And so the next part is that they kept them secret so it wouldn't shake the viewer's confidence and skill if they were wrong. Remote viewing attempts to sense unknown information about places or events. Normally, it is performed to detect current events, but during military and domestic intelligence applications, viewers claim to sense things in the future, experiencing precognition. And we're going to see Sean Webb talk about that as a reality. So here, excuse me, in the 1970s, as I said, the Stargate project really gets going in 1978 officially. And so in 1970, United States intelligence sources believed that the Soviet Union was spending 60 million rubles annually on psychotronic research in response to claims that the Soviet program had produced results. The CIA initiated funding for a new program known as SCANTI, Scan by Coordinate, in the same year. Remote viewing research began in 1972 at the Stanford Research Institute, a la Esalen. This is where a lot of the movers and shakers are going to be from, in Menlo Park, California. Proponents Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff, which Puthoff and Ingo Swann are both Scientologists, which doesn't play a huge point in today's conversation, but I think it's interesting to know and at least be aware of that some of the main proponents of this research come from a sort of Scientologist background. We did a whole sponsored stream on Scientology and Hubbard. So L. Ron Hubbard, if you want to check that out, that's a previous stream as well. Physicists Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff began testing physics for the SRI in 1970, including one who would later become an international celebrity, Israeli Uri Geller. Their apparently successful results garnered interest within the U.S. Department of Defense. Ray Heyman, professor of psychology at the University of Oregon, was asked by the Air Force psychologist Lieutenant Colonel Austin Kibler, then director of behavioral research for ARPA, to go to SRI and investigate. He was to specifically evaluate Geller. Hyman's report to the government was that Geller was a complete fraud, and as a consequence, Targ and Puthoff lost their government contract to work with them further. The result was a publicity tour for Geller, Targ, and Puthoff to seek private funding and further their research on Geller. Well, that's very different than what we're about to read here in just a moment. And so anyways, this leads into the 80s. So in the early 1979, the research at SRI was integrated into Grill Flame, which was redesignated INSCOM in 1983. And in 1984, the existence of the program was reported by Jack Anderson. And in that year, it was unfavorably received by the National Academy of Sciences and National Research Council. In late 1985, the Army funding was terminated, but the program was redesignated Sunstreak and funded by the DIA's Scientific and Technical Intelligence Directorate. Now, do you think that the U.S. government would continue to fund research if there weren't maybe probable or at least positive results regarding their research from the 70s? Again, what we read here is that the U.S. government basically wrote it off as a quackery. But why would they continue to fund it all the way into the late 80s? That doesn't make any sense. In 1991, most of the contracting for the program was transferred from SRI to Science Applications International Corporation, with Edwin May controlling 70% of the contractor funds and 85% of the data. Its security was altered from Special Access Program to Limited Dissemination, and it was given its final name, Stargate. So that talks a little bit about the closure of it, or at least what we believe to be the closure. In 1995, the Defense Appropriations Bill directed that program to be transferred from DIA to CIA oversight. The CIA commissioned a report by the American Institutes of Research that found that remote viewing had not been provoked to work by a psychic mechanism, and said that it had not been used operationally. The CIA subsequently canceled and declassified the program. And so here is the actual. This is from the Department of the Army, June 9th, 1983. And this gives a whole mechanistic breakdown on how they believe remote viewing and astral projection works, theories of consciousness, theories about a simulation universe, contacts with entities, all types of stuff. So here, I'll go ahead and share this with you. This is actually on the CIA.gov website. I'll share this with you guys right now. So if you guys want to read that, like I said, we're not going to read this whole thing. Maybe we'll read the conclusion section. But part of it is that they believe that the universe is basically like this, a torus. And they connected, and in this article, they argue, oh, well, that's part of all these spiritual traditions. And they claim that this is part of Christianity's belief in the Holy Spirit. Not quite. But they do highlight the Orphic egg. So this is a popular symbol from ancient Greece, which is sort of indicative of the cosmos itself. They would highlight that the serpent represents these sort of torus-like fields of energy that spiral from the top downward and then create this sort of vortex, or for them, the sort of energetic universe. So this I just brought up because, yes, this is a symbol in which I think is probably related to aspects of what it is that they think they were uncovering. But this is, again, the full report here. It goes into the torus fields. See right here, it says galactic north, our galaxy, galactic south, talking about black holes, or this claims as a white hole, or the nucleus. You see it's sort of like a cell, and so on and so forth. And so page 25 right here, is this one page 25? Yes, I believe this was page 25. This was the missing page for so long that people were requesting doing all these FOIA requests to the CIA, and they said, look, we don't have page 25. We don't know what happened to page 25. Well, it turned out that the Monroe Institute had page 25, and then they have published this, I believe, towards the end of, I believe this was in the 21st century. So this is post 2000 that they finally got page 25 in it. And we're going to read some of these articles here that kind of discuss page 25. There's also an article here. This is the one by Alex Edwards. He was the atheist skeptic who, in this article, of course, as you would expect, he was terrified by the Koof, and he very much was. He was talking about how he ruined his life because he couldn't deal with one of his dogs dying. And so when one of the dogs died, then he started to get interested in the Gateway program, and he participated. This is a very long article. Like I said, we're not going to read this, but he talks about day 5. I check in advance, and he basically does all the procedures, listens to the tapes, the binaural beats for, it's like 190 some days, I believe. Let's see here. 190. And then he kind of gives up on it, and he gives sort of his thoughts on it, that it's maybe not as quackery as some would have thought, but he didn't experience the levels that other people had. Now, we're not going to read that whole thing, but I will share it with you if you guys do want to go through that whole thing. Here it is. This is a Medium article. And so there's that for you as well. But before we get into some of the other articles, like, I really want to read this one because this is the 25th page. This talks about that missing page in the CIA's Gateway report on astral projection versus simulation theory. Now, this author here, this was written in June of 2021. This author here is very much in favor of the belief that we live in a simulation. But again, before we get into that, let me read you a little bit from this book. This book is written by Dr. Jeffrey J. Kripal. He is a scholar at Rice University, and he was commissioned by Michael Murphy and David Price. Michael Murphy's the one that's still living, to write the ultimate sort of historical overview of the Esalen Institute. And so if you're not familiar with the Esalen Institute, here, let me pull this back up. It's actually something you probably should be interested in, or at least know about. And so the Esalen Institute, the leading center for exploring human potential. And so the human potential movement that got going in the 60s, they are really the fulfillment of this. And so they have all these different ways in which you can, expand your consciousness. You can go here for various seminars and classes. They do all types of stuff. And so this is in Big Sur, California, arguably one of the most beautiful places in the world. And this is a little overview of the premise there, but you can find YouTube videos discussing the Esalen Institute. Again, it was very influential in the human potential movement, which then dovetails into some of the psychic research we're getting ready to read about, but also the utilization of psychedelics, the countercultural movement of the 1960s, the counterculture movement, all that types of stuff. So anyways, if you actually have this book, on page 339, you get into sex with angels. And so Russell Targ had this experience where he was able to remote view. This is kind of what sets it off. He's the quantum physicist that we read a little bit about in the overview of the Stargate program, the Stargate project. But he was able to remote view back to his house in Palo Alto, so there in the Bay Area. And he was able to look down into the living room, and he could see exactly who was there, what was going on. And this led into his theories about quantum mechanics, consciousness, all this different stuff. So there's again multiple pages here. I don't want to bore you with me reading a book to you, but I do want to read a few different things and kind of jump around here. So they're talking about how so like here, Targ has recounted to both lay and scientific audience some of the remote viewing experiments he helped oversee. His history, or his story, many details of which only recently became classified by the CIA under the Freedom of Information Act, and deeply intertwined with the Esalen story, and embodies the kinds of scientific spiritual transformations Esalen has been pushing from the beginning. Targ's life work also happens to ground much of the narrative of Murphy's third life work, also happens to ground much third occult novel, The End of Ordinary History, and some real world Cold War events and government funded research. So that's what I'm saying. Interesting that the CIA was helping people perform some of this remote viewing research with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Now, let's see here. He also remembers that some of the humorous details of how he actually got the NASA grant. So interestingly enough, NASA was putting money into some of their research at the Esalen Institute. Targ and some conference participants were standing on a pier at St. Simons Island, just off the Georgia coast. Targ refers to this as their psychic peer group. When Werner von Braun turned to Jim Fletcher and said something like, "Oh, give him the money, Jim. We all know that stuff is real. My grandmother always knew when the trains would crash or when someone was about to die. These may have been accomplished scientists, but their experiences of the world was much deeper than their current science would allow." Apparently, Fletcher was listening to the psychic peer group. NASA subsequently awarded Targ his first major grant. With the money, Targ co-founded the program at the Stanford Research Institute, again, the SRI that we were talking about, with Hal Puthoff, and helped direct it for 10 years from 1972 to 1982. Now, remember, the Stargate program doesn't start till 1978. So there's 6 years here that the government is actually funding private research in regards to the Esalen Institute. Thank you. First Person Q just donated a gifted 5 COTEL crew memberships. Thank you so much, First Person Q. God bless you, brother. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you, brother, for all your support. Really, really appreciate it. And let me just answer a few super chats since we're here. Thank you so much, First Person Q. Really appreciate you, brother. And our brother James Cotaridis, I'm sorry. throws in $5, says, DPH, Christ is born. Glorify him. Absolutely. Are you familiar with The Everlasting Man by G.K. Chesterton? Yes. Chesterton was a bulwark against the Fabians, Utopians, eugenicists. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you so much, James. I really appreciate that, brother. And I will keep doing my best. And thank you, brother, for the $5 super chat. I really appreciate that. So, and again, thank you, First Person Q. Anyways, let me continue here because this is some interesting stuff. So, when I asked Targ about Esalen's connection to all this, meaning all this sort of psychic research and remote viewing that was being funded by both eventually the CIA, but initially from NASA. And why would NASA be so interested in remote viewing? Again, I'm very skeptical. I'm public. I do not believe in the moon landing. I don't think it makes total sense. So because I don't believe in the moon landing and I do believe aliens are demonic entities, to me, it does kind of make sense. Why would NASA be interested in remote viewing? We got another super chat. AC throws in $10. Thank you so much, AC. Really appreciate all your support, brother. He said Esalen was big in David Fuller's Rebel Wisdom and guests he had on, like Richard and Becca Tarnas. Rebel Wisdom did the Rise of Jordan Peterson documentary and was central to the IDW before breaking off against JBP for a more Jungian worldview than Jordan B. Peterson's. Oh, well, thank you for that, AC. I was not familiar. But thank you so much, brother, for the $10 super chat. And thank you for all your support. I really appreciate it. Okay. So asking Targ about the Esalen's connections, he commented on how generous Michael Murphy, this is the founder of the Esalen Institute, was to the parapsychological community. Murphy hosted several 5-day conferences on parapsychology in the Big House. This is the main house there in Esalen. Several 5-day conferences on parapsychology in the Big House from 1981 to 1985, focusing on such topics as the effects of distant mental influences on healing, the implications of precognition on the philosophy of time, and the physics of causality. Targ remembers many happy weeks with Charlie Tart, Marilyn Schlitz, and others in the Big House, in the baths, and over the lodge dining table. Now, there's actually a really interesting story in here in which Hunter S. Thompson was actually staying at Esalen, and Esalen has this sort of natural hot tub there on their grounds. And apparently Hunter S. Thompson was not too fond of homosexuals. And so this is a side note. This has nothing to do related to our topic today. But if you read this book in the beginning, it's quite interesting because Hunter S. Thompson, he went in there and started harassing because it was known that a lot of homosexual men would go at night naked and get into their hot springs. And he was not fond of it. And I guess he went down there to confront all these guys. They beat him up, and then he pulled a gun on them. And Hunter S. Thompson was never allowed to come back to Esalen. Anyways, I digress. I just thought that was a funny story. So just wanted to let you guys know about that. Anyways, continuing on the actual topic here. He recalls how they would use these weeks of all-site retreat sessions to figure out what they wanted to do next year in the respective research institutes. Stimulated by the discussion and refreshed by the grounds of Esalen, they would then go back to their offices and labs and do the actual research and publish the results in professional journals. And then we're skipping a few paragraphs here. He says the CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Army, and the Navy would all follow NASA, investing a total of over $20 million in remote viewing programs, drawings and all. The SRI unit was hardly the only one in operation. In fact, the money was distributed through numerous channels in a variety of programs, including Project Stargate out of Fort Meade, Maryland, where a man named Joseph McMonigal worked as a particularly successful remote viewer for the years after a dramatic near-death experience convinced him that his consciousness was not restricted to the biological boundaries of his skin and skull. Dale E. Graff, the founder and director of Stargate, went on to pursue his own psychic research on intuition, remote viewing, and precognitive dreaming, which he believes are connected to the phenomenon of Jungian synchronicity. The Soviets got wind of these activities through a 1976 paper Puthoff and Targ wrote describing their clairvoyant experiments for the influential journal of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. They subsequently invited Targ to demonstrate their work for the Soviet Academy of Sciences in 1983. Now, 1983, I thought we were still in the Cold War. The Soviet Union hadn't fallen yet. This was the same year that Murphy's An End to Ordinary History appeared, telling the tale of an American psychic researcher named Lester Boone dealing with the Soviets. Well, maybe it wasn't so fictional after all. Why so much money and international interest? According to many involved in these programs, such experiments consistently produced results. So contrary to the Wikipedia article that we read, right? Such experiments consistently produced results that either met or far exceeded their expectations of the agencies doing their secret investigating. To take just one of the many examples of the group's most accomplished remote viewers, Pat Price, who I mentioned earlier, successfully and minutely described a Soviet Union weapons factory in Semipalatinsk, Siberia, with only the longitude and latitude of coordinates given to him. Targ's books, tapes, and papers are filled with dozens of similar examples, many of them accompanied by the original and now declassified drawings of actual photographs of the sites. For anyone who cares to look. Many do not care to look, of course, I suspect, because of the material comes with a very heavy metaphysical price. Such results, after all, imply that the present materialistic picture of the universe is woefully and ridiculously inadequate. Targ presents mathematical models to explain physical events, but he acknowledged that every theory of being is perishable and that the future theories will no doubt arise to explain the same facts in a more fuller fashion. Okay, so moving on here, I want to describe a few of these different experiments before we move on. Okay, so as a striking example of just how filtered our ordinary perceptions of a very non-ordinary universe might actually be, Targ tells the story of testing Pat Price's psychic superpowers at the Stanford Research Institute. Price was asked to describe the location of a CIA agent who had traveled to a random location within the Bay Area, this time a particular swimming pool in Palo Alto. Price accurately described the location of the agent, even getting the precise shape and measurements of the pool, 90% correct. There was one significant error, however. Price insisted that there were two large upright water tanks established on the site. There were not. Targ chalked this up to some kind of simple error or mental inference until, that is, 1997, when he received in the mail a brochure for a historical celebration of Palo Alto's centennial celebration. In this brochure was a historical photo of the same site that they had used in an earlier test experiment. Targ found himself staring at the 1947 photo in disbelief. At this same site was a water purification plant, and at that point in space and time, and its central features were two upright water tanks that were the tallest structures of Palo Alto. Somehow, Targ was forced to conclude that Pat Price had seen not only across space, but potentially back in time. And so he goes on to recant some of these different experiences. Now, again, I'm not going to recount the Soviet experiment. This is another paragraph. In Murphy's novel, these experiments take a fictional form of a telepathic experiment between Darwin Fall and famous Russian clairvoyant Nikolai Gorsky, both of whom saw the experiment as a symbolic gesture of peace. Darwin and Nikolai also conduct telepathic experiments with the Argentinian boy named Ramon, whom the American weapons dealer Lester Boone loaned to the Soviets for their parapsychological research. Well, this Ramon gentleman who he just described, they're going to be talking about, hold on, let me find the exact spot. So these are hardly irrelevant details. This is so such sex with angels found elaborate expression in some of the early Christian Gnostic churches. Yeah, exactly. Gnostic churches. And it latter took a darker turn in the medieval succubi and incubi traditions, perhaps first mentioned by Augustine in his 5th century text, The City of God, involving male and female demons that come at night to seduce and have sex with humans while they sleep. Here also we can place the late medieval witchcraft editions of having sex with Satan and much later modern UFO lore about alien abductions and bizarre sexual experiments involving ovum extraction, forced insemination, and the creation of a hybrid human alien race on hovering spacecraft. In other words, in the modern alien abduction, we are back to Genesis 6, even in the symbolic frame has shifted from an ancient mythological code to a modern technological one. Such mythologies, of course, are negative transformations of repressed instinctual energies. Hence, the classical devil in the Christian imagination, cloven feet, pitchfork in hand, horny head, is clearly a mythical transformation of the half goat shepherd Pan, the Greek god of fertility. What a culture represses always returns to haunt it. Okay. And so we move further along here, and it begins to talk about uh, Michael Murphy's fictional story, of which he owns the Esalen Institute, and he's obviously there while they're performing some of this research. In his fictional story, he talks about this Ramon, who is a remote viewer, right? And so it says, I'll read both paragraphs. The assistants jump on Ramon and strap him down while Kirov witnesses a series of internal visions pass before the inner eye. The inner eye, the imagination. Two shadowy figures, fringed with light, circled around each other, then began to embrace. Kirov wiped cold sweat from his face as another image formed. Two drops of water, vividly etched against the emerald wall, slid into one another. He was being given a revelation whose meaning is suggested by a subsequent fantasy of two cartoon figures of his father, the Soviet ideologue, and grandfather, the Sufi mystic, each uncomprehending of the other points of view. The merging water drops on the emerald wall were densely meaningful and consistently homoerotic. They dripped down the wall to join Ramon and Kirov, Ramon and the cosmonauts in the Emerald Space Presence, even Kirov's grandfather and father, within a single phallic line of psychic transmission. That was a sexual attack, quote unquote. One of the assistants says with a smirk, Ramon still has an erection. He is possessed, Kirov whispers. Treat him gently, quote unquote. Kirov then wonders whether this is what the cosmonauts had feared, that is, the erotic element of their apparitions. The only way to receive an angel, Kirov thought, was to be undivided, for the least fear could turn into panic as you were drawn toward a pleasure like death. The only way to encounter an angel, in other words, is to accept the occult presence as fundamentally erotic. Again, totally not consistent with an Orthodox Christian worldview of how one would actually engage with a angel. Certainly not an angel of God. As fundamentally erotic, not to repress the same injuries down into the unconscious, but to integrate them into your conscious. Yeah, go ahead and do the butt stuff. That's good for your consciousness. This is what it meant to be undivided, androgyne, right? A hermaphroditic, just like Baphomet. We just did a stream on the historical overview of Baphomet. Are you not seeing some of the similarities here? This is what it meant to be undivided, to not transform the pleasure like death, that is the erotic, into yet another evil projection. So if you don't incorporate into your psyche, guys, you're going to actually have an experience of the devil. So anyways, this goes on, and you guys, again, can read this. This is in everything I read was between pages 340 through 353. So a lot more there. This is a whole, again, very interesting book. Obviously not something that we're going to read as spiritually insightful. Well, it could be spiritually insightful, but certainly highlights things that we might be against. Now, when it talks about the fear, this is what I want to highlight with you guys next is when you go to the Gateway Project here, or the Gateway Program, if you go down here to the Gateway Program, I think this is really interesting. It says the Gateway Program, we call it this because the series of techniques do lead to a gateway into different modes of perception. From our observation, the individuals who become involved in this program find it both deeply disturbing and deeply satisfying. From time to time, one response outweighs the other. Some participants run into what we call the fear barrier, particularly if they try to advance too fast. One way or another, this manifests as a fear about the potential loss of the self as they know it. For this reason, the program develops along carefully controlled steps, each with a strong and positive base. This permits the self protective mechanisms to work. Hundreds of times we have observed that when an individual begins to stimulate himself more than his level of adjustment will allow, he blanks out the experience. He feels either that he went to sleep or that he clicked out for a period of time. Perhaps the next time or the fifth time he repeats the exercise, he'll remember the experience and then edge his level of adjustment, his homostatic network, into a larger awareness. But we also see that individuals advance through these stages. They develop a deep sense of self-worth, much as a child proclaims his new worth when he shouts, "Now I'm 7." So they feel that vital sense of growth and an enjoyment from new levels of ability, creativity, and self control. Best of all, their interior sense of direction strengthens. For most of all, this takes readjustment, dedication, time, and occasionally courage. Yet, at this inner process begins as they learn to cooperate with it and engage it. They often experience a sense of lightness, deftness, even a great playfulness. So, my only point in bringing that up is that people encounter this fear. Now, again, from Esalen, they talked about encountering these entities that would have sexual attacks that could cause people that if they didn't incorporate the homoerotic elements, that they would experience it as evil. And here, this is in the Gateway program. Obviously, it's not going that far in regard to the homoerotic elements, but this fear barrier. And again, I think that there's certainly indication here of potential demonic activity in regards to the entities that they encounter, because what we're going to read about this stuff is that they do encounter entities. So that's what I want to go into next before we actually watch this whole conversation about the CIA funds remote viewing programs. This is with Sean Webb. So moving to the next one, here is this article here. Let me share that with you all. Okay. And guys, if you want to support the work, please do so by sending a super chat using Streamlabs or Dono Chat, or gift some memberships here. Gift some COTEL Crew memberships. Major thank you to AC and First Person Q for already doing that. Or you can send in a super chat here on YouTube. Looks like we are up to date on everything. Okay. So moving forward, this article is on the 25th page of the CIA's Gateway Report on astral projection versus simulation theory. Okay. It was 38 years ago that page 25 of the CIA's analysis and assessment of the Gateway process went missing. In 2003, the information was declassified and the hunt began. The military had produced mind-blowing research on the concepts of other dimensions and astral projection, and this one page was a significant puzzle piece missing from the equation, but now it has been found. Oddly enough, it was simply emailed as an attachment to someone who had been interested in writing articles about the Gateway Report for some time now, and thus this is the last mind-bending page was added to the incomplete report for us to get the full effect of the experiments and what was learned. Time to finally see what it says and how it compares to simulation theory. So as I said, this author promotes the idea of the simulated universe. Okay. Some backstory. In 1983, the CIA's Gateway Report was produced by Itzhak Bentov, an Israeli-American engineer in biomedicine, and Colonel Wayne McDonnell, a U.S. Army lieutenant. In 2003, this intriguing 28-page report became declassified. The document was released, but the highly crucial page 25 was, for whatever reason, still missing. For those not well acquainted with the concept, astral projection is often considered similar in nature to out-of-body experiences. Individuals that partake in the practice believe that, with the right technologies and guidance, humans can become capable of training their conscience to be able to travel beyond the barriers of space-time, allowing our minds to explore the universe and other realities. Our minds become no longer confined to the space-time dimension we're so familiar with. Perhaps this is how it feels to live in a simulation, the kind postulated by the simulation theory. Such a unique feeling might be some leftover residue from another reality, and it remains in the unconscious along with other memories of other times and places. Yeah, sure. The CIA report, McDonald states that his primary goal is to be able to build an accurate and valid model in the functions of consciousness to remove the occult stigma attached with out-of-body experiences. There could actually be practical application for the practice, but that has yet to be seen. He does note that if the military were to somehow involve themselves with astral projection for any sort, there could be the risk of potential encounters when passing the boundaries of space-time in which humans may come across non-corporeal or coherent energy of life forms, demons, and they would certainly need to be prepared for it. The United States Army spent years after this trying to conduct remote viewing missions by training the possibly psychic abilities of soldiers for them to project and observe various locations across the planet. This is from Colonel McDonald. However, a phased approach for entering a gateway experience in an accelerated mode would seem to be required if the time needed to reach advanced states of altered consciousness is brought within more manageable limits from the standpoint of establishing an organized, wide exploitation of the gateway's potential. So, mystery of the cosmos here. Guys, smash that like for everybody who's here. We only got 97 likes. Where are you going to get all this information else, guys? I've spent hours collecting all this stuff and reading through it. So show me a little bit of love, but just to hit the like button, please. Let me refresh my Zen here. Helps me speed through all this stuff. So, okay, we'll be moving along in just a moment. Okay, A Mystery of the Cosmos. The CIA report takes the reader for a wild ride through 24 pages of transcendent scientific and spiritual perspectives. What they're talking about is this, guys. So they're referring to this report right here, this US Army report. Again, I've already shared that link. This comes straight from the CIA website, and I'm going to share that with you guys. So if anybody wants to read it, feel free. You can do so. Okay. So going back to our article, scientific and spiritual perspective, techniques, and possible applications for traversing space-time through projection. After much discussion of belief systems, physics, hypnosis, and meditation to the point of pushing the ideas of our existence to a breaking point, the report abruptly stops at page 24 and skips straight to page 26. This is so because in order to attain self-consciousness, the consciousness of the absolute, again, they always talk about the absolute, but they never describe what exactly the absolute is. It's sort of the abstract concept of an energetic entity, God, if you will, but it's never personal. They never describe it personally. Absolute must project a hologram of itself and then perceive it. That hologram is a mere image of the absolute in infinity, still exists outside time and space, but is one step removed from the absolute and is the crucial agent of all creation, all reality. And what they're citing is this report right here, guys. It's literally in this Army report. Almost as if the entire previous section were something common and insignificant, McDonald simply continues with a motivational aspect section that addresses using the gateway instead of the aforementioned and highly detailed breakdowns of all aspects of astral projection and its implication. But the rate of progress is so much faster with the gateway approach than it is with transcendental meditation and other forms of mental self-discipline. And its horizons seem to be so much wider than the discipline needed to practice it would seem to be within the means of even the impatient, result-oriented, skeptical pragmatists of our society. So again, within the gateway program, they're using binaural beats and these Hemi-sync techniques. So this is the Hemi-sync website, in which I think there's plenty of peer-reviewed research that obviously highlights that this stuff works, that you can use frequencies to alter consciousness, to sync the hemispheres of your brain. And so, like, if you go over here to Robert Monroe, and that's where the whole Gateway Project comes from. He was an American radio broadcasting executive who became known for his altered states of ideas about altered states of consciousness and the founding of the Monroe Institute, which continues to promote these ideas. In his 1971 book, Journeys Out of the Body, is credited for popularizing the term out-of-body experience. Monroe developed Hemi-sync, which claimed it could facilitate enhanced brain performance. He was one of the founders of the Jefferson Cable Corporation, the first cable company to cover Central Virginia. Now, what's interesting is moving down here. According to his own account, while experimenting with sleep learning in 1958, Monroe experienced an unusual phenomenon, which he described as sensations of paralysis and vibration, accompanied by a bright light that appeared to be shining on him from a shallow angle. Monroe went on to say that this occurred another 9 times over the next 6 weeks, culminating in his first out-of-body experience. Monroe recorded this account in his 1971 book and went on to become a prominent researcher in the field of human consciousness. Now we move down here, Hemi-sync, and these are some of the techniques that make the Gateway program more effective. Remember the quote that we were reading right here about the Gateway approach, then it's with transcendental meditation. Well, what they're using are these Hemi-sync techniques. In 1975, Monroe registered his first of several patents. There we go. In 1975, Monroe registered the first of several patents concerning audio techniques designed to stimulate brain functions until the left and right hemispheres became synchronized. Monroe held that this state, dubbed Hemi-sync, hemispheric synchronization, could be used to promote mental well-being or to trigger altered states of consciousness. Monroe's concept was based on an earlier hypothesis known as binaural beats and has since been expanded upon as a commercial basis by the self-help industry. Hemi-sync is short for hemispheric synchronization, also known as brainwave synchronization. Monroe indicated that the technique synchronizes the two hemispheres in one's brain, thereby creating a frequency-flowing response designed to evoke certain effects. Hemi-sync has been used for many purposes, including relaxation and deep induction, learning and memory aids, helping those with physical and mental difficulties, and reaching altered states of consciousness through the use of sound. The technique involves using sound waves to entrain brain waves. Wearing headphones, Monroe claimed that brains respond by producing a third sound called binaural beats that encourage various brainwave activity changes. In 2002, a University of Virginia presentation at the Society for Psychophysiological Research examined Monroe's claim. The presentation demonstrated that EEG changes did not occur when the standard electromagnetic headphones of Monroe setup were replaced by air conduction headphones, which were connected by a remote transducer by rubber tubes. This suggests that the basis for the entertainment effects is electromagnetic rather than acoustical. Replicated, double-blind, randomized trials on anesthetized patients have found Hemi-sync effective as a partial replacement for fentanyl during surgery. A similar study found it ineffective at replacing propofol, however. So that is some of the techniques that, again, he's highlighting, which is unique to the Gateway program. Okay, moving on. Understanding consciousness in its various dimensions is part of the work of world expert Nir Zissou, author of Simulation Creationism and the founder of the Global Architect Institute. Zissou's model suggests that our reality and existence can be explained by assuming we are all part of a simulation whose objective is to research and monitor events related to creation and life. Furthermore, according to the model, everything we see and smell, our actions and our thoughts are predetermined. Aha. So determinism. You do not have free will. And transmitted to an observer whose reality is a movie, a transmission from a relay station with the observer as the endpoint. The observer's consciousness is the simulation component in charge of recording his emotional response to the events/stimuli being transmitted. Consciousness is therefore the issue both in simulation theory and the Gateway report. They can be reconciled if one takes a new perspective. Numerous requests have been put in over the years for the sake of trying to get a hold of the climactic page 25 that was missing from McDonald's report. For most of these filings, the CIA has claimed there never even was a page 25 in their possession at any point. But this has only fueled the determination of those who believed in the existence and wanted answers. Everyone from causal readers to government transparency activists to conspiracy theorists. Some of these theorists also suspect that McDonald intentionally omitted page 25 from the report, which may or may not be the case. This is just somebody, again, asking for page 25. Now we get into the teachings of Robert Monroe. The teachings of Robert Monroe, founder of the Monroe Institute, played a significant part in the invention of both the Gateway experience and the Gateway report. Interestingly enough, not long after an article was published mentioning the Gateway report, someone reached out from this same Monroe Institute to announce that the missing 25th page of the Gateway report was in their own archives in Virginia. Apparently, a large number of people had been pursuing the CIA in their attempts to get hold of the page and make a complete report. Despite the number of people requesting to see the missing page of the report, apparently no one had actually reached out to the Monroe Institute itself, where the page had been residing the entire time. It wasn't until one of the first articles about the Gateway report that the Monroe Institute began reaching out. The original author of that piece somehow allowed the email to go unnoticed and get lost in their personal inbox. Okay. They had plans to capitalize on one of the more popular articles talking about how, I'll just read the whole thing. But the Monroe Institute tried again to make contact, informing them that they had the elusive page 25 of the report. However, the Institute refused to part with the page without a bit of marketing and fanfare around the event. They had plans to capitalize on one of the more popular articles addressing the situation at the time, along with some TikTok videos that were circulating and mentioning the elusive page finally having been located. So obviously this is much more recent if there's TikToks about it. After all the marketing plans were in works, the author that the Monroe Institute had contacted about the missing page had one final call with a cryptic statement that certain aspects of the report were being discussed that they had no intention of being open about at the time. Once the call ended, the contact with the Monroe Institute went completely quiet, and quite a bit of time passed before anyone heard anything further. After a period of silence, the Monroe Institute finally resurfaced and provided the complete Gateway report. That's what this is right here, the complete Gateway report. And I didn't share this one. This is also from the CIA. This is, again, talking about the Monroe Institute of Applied Sciences and what the Gateway program is. Let me post that for you guys. Okay, so moving forward. Jenny Wedby, the director of marketing and communications within the Monroe Institute, clarified that the previous COO and COO of the company were no longer a part of the Institute, and they had gone through a complete overhaul of the organization. But now she was handling things about the Gateway report and was pleased to be able to finally open up about the experiment and the Monroe Institute's part played within the study. Imagine if again, no, we don't care. The missing page. The entire Gateway report, all pages included, is now ready to be presented and taken in by the public audience. Starting the astral and literary journey with the word absolute, this word is significant with its implications on both quantum physics as well as the spiritual beliefs tied into projection. Again, I've already shared with you guys this whole report. So if you want it, I was already shared in the live chat. That is what this is. Okay. With the energy of motion is measured, this is what we call time, according to physicists anyway. However, in more simplified terms, time could be more accurately described as the amount of change being measured, whether that's in an environment or in a specific object. Larger vibratory patterns have to provide limits for the necessary motion to change to occur, though a definitive location must be pinpointed within the framework to make this particular location distinct from other areas and all over overall space. Whew. Uncontained energy has no limits, so it becomes a force that is incapable of being held back from permeating and existing in all locations. McDonald explains further by telling us that this state of absolute refers to the fact that there becomes no way to separate the details of where here is compared to where there may be. It is simply the absolute. So again, these are drawings and stuff from that report. The Gateway report describes the absolute as the primary force of energy within our universe, but it is all of the energy and in mass. It is the force responsible for powering our entirety in this hologram of a universe. Yeah, give me a break. Okay. Anyways, let's skip forward. This is kind of boring about his simulation theory. McDonald further describes how nearly every religion in the history of our planet has incorporated some type of stylized representation of the universal spire. Whether it's been the Chinese spiral through the four powers, the Hebrew tree of life, the Hindu equivalent of the same, the labyrinth described by the Hellenic world, or the Holy Spirit in Christianity. No. The same area of thought has infiltrated all of these beliefs and become part of their primary teaching. No. The manner in which the absolute was found is the defining difference between the conclusions drawn by religious scholars and the developments that have taken place in modern physics. Those who focused on religion found this energy by simple intuition, whereas the experts in physics turned their attention to quantitative research. Right in the midst of all this is when the gateway finally appeared, providing a much needed intermediary for accessing the universal hologram. The third portion of the page delves into a common concept in psychology. One cannot possibly access and understand the absolute, the universe, and the cosmic egg until they first become able to access and acquire knowledge of themselves. Achieving an altered state of consciousness includes an enhanced state of self perception to become capable of perceiving the universal hologram as well. This possibility is nearly guaranteed by the gateway experience. Achieving Hemi-sync. Robert Monroe was a radio broadcasting. Yes, we know. Monroe published a book, Journeys Out of the Body, which discuss a self experiment of using specifically calibrated sound frequencies to induce out of body experiences while sleeping. The research and development department Monroe formed in his company is what eventually evolved into the Monroe Institute today. The Institute now continues with similar studies, especially experimenting with the concept of Hemi-sync or hemispheric synchronization, which focuses on achieving equal balance in the frequency electrical brain patterns and amplitude present in both the right and left hemispheres of the brain. This is accomplished through the use of two different techniques. And the first technique, headphones, are used to introduce an external frequency that is easily recognizable and triggers the brain to attempt to copy or mimic this frequency by making adjustments to the output of the brain waves. This is called frequency following response. As an example, when a brain is resting, it is at a beta level of frequency. Upon hearing a theta level sound, though, it will deviate from it being in beta. The second technique utilized is referred to as beta frequency, in which is when frequencies of a contrasting nature are presented to each of a person's ears, allowing the brain to begin to hear these distinct differences between these two frequencies. By causing the brain to hear one type of frequency through one ear and another in the opposite, the brain then becomes capable of hearing the frequency of the difference of the two sounds, opening up to perception of additional frequencies that are only audible at a nearly marginal or subliminal level. The ideal conditions for having a brain be able to produce brainwave outputs of increasingly elevated frequency and amplitude are to have the body suspended in a sleep-like state and having optimal relaxation within the left brain. Consciousness becomes able to click out of what we know as space-time. If these wave patterns are able to descend beyond the oscillation frequency of 10 to 30 centimeters per second, in this state, one's consciousness is able to join the infinity. Monroe suspects that being able to stay in this clicked out state for an extended periods of time would allow us to become capable of communication with beings in other dimensions. This Hemi-sync technology has now been sold to a company sharing the same name, and that's what this website is, Hemi-sync. Okay. Bob Holbrook, now chief engineer of the Monroe Institute, strongly believes that the head trauma he experienced from a horrible car accident was only resolved via audio offerings provided by the Institute. Bob provided further commentary on how the Monroe Institute has used a technique based on binaural beats to produce new sound technology, which they now refer to as Monroe Audio Support. Whereas these beats were only one type of audio tech available, their advancement in this field has led to the development of over 50 types now. These variations on the original binaural beats appear to allow participants to access numerous levels of consciousness and have even more intense encounters than before. Gamma synchrony is the key factor in the Monroe Audio Support. The two features worth noting are amplitude modulation, which all allows live manipulation of the soundscape and its volume by technicians, and phase modulation, which allows the directions to be changed of where it appears a sound is originating. Recordings of the experiment conducted within the Institute's Research and Development Department can be found in an archive labeled the Explorer Series. These tapes now the effects of Monroe's own subliminal suggestions when combined with particular frequencies are evidence of personal reports of those who experience environments that were of a non-physical nature. Before COVID set off a series of intense restrictions, the Monroe Institute welcomed many meditators to their physical headquarters located in Virginia to tackle a variety of challenges. With ever-increasing levels of difficulty, they provide a week-long set of tests and opportunities to encourage an individual's conscience to reach and travel through time, space, and whatever may lie beyond those planes. However, not all will achieve success with these endeavors. These experiments were and documented experiments are what intrigued the CIA and led to the development of the Gateway Report. So we're going to learn more about the Gateway Report. I don't want to keep boring you guys by reading, but we'll say this is an important one. So regarding page 25, the Gateway Report, Jenny has stated that she felt like part of why the page went missing for so long was due to society at the time not being ready. But the times have changed now, and this information is far more relevant and ready to be possessed. It's possible that the page could have been intentionally left out, but it's also possible that it was excluded as a simple accident. There is no way to currently truly know, and no one has spoken up about the matter as of the present. The implications of its release 20 years ago and the potential backlash that could have occurred due to the mentions of religion and how it could affect lives could have been devastating. But today, society as a whole is much more relaxed on the topics and willing to accept what was discovered and included in the report. The focus today is more on having an awakened sense of consciousness, identity, especially in younger age groups. So now is the perfect time for this information to come to light. Right. So we're going to be, again, that's kind of the end of that article there. We're going to be watching a video now, and I just want to highlight, some of the important people here I didn't go through. Okay, we know what remote viewing is. I don't need to talk to you about that. Ingo Swann was an American psychic artist and writer known for being the co-creator, along with Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff, of remote viewing and specifically the Stargate project. Russell Targ, this is him. Again, Targ joined the Stanford Research Institute in 1972, where he and Puthoff coined the term remote viewing for the practice of seeking impressions about a distant, unseen target. Although it's been characterized as pseudoscience, which is interesting given how much the U.S. government has invested into it. And then Joseph McMoneagle was a retired U.S. Army chief warrant officer. He was involved in remote viewing operations and experiments conducted by the U.S. Army Intelligence and Stanford Research Institute. He was among the first personnel recruited for the classified program known as the Stargate Project. Along with colleague Ingo Swann, McMoneagle is best known for claims surrounding investigation of remote viewing and the use of paranormal abilities for military intelligence gathering. His interests also include near-death experiences, out-of-body, and unidentified flying objects, of course. And then this is the article. I think I shared this with you guys about this guy talking about everything, the skeptic. So we're not going to go into that. So without further ado, let's kind of get into this video here. This is on the Sean Ryan show. And he has a gentleman named Sean Webb come on, who is working with the Monroe Institute. And he himself is a big proponent and advocate for remote viewing and astral projection. So now we're going to get into, and this is actually a part 2 series. We're only watching part 1. I'm sure down here is part 2. Yeah. How average humans can look into it. This is basically the more evangelical dimension of it. And, we're not going to so much watch that. This one is more interesting because he goes over the history of everything. So here we go. Without further ado, this is the video we're going to watch. And so again, if anybody wants to make some comments, you want to support my research, again, it took a while to put all this stuff together. I would greatly appreciate all that. You can do so by sending in a super chat on the Dono chat or the Streamlabs links. Both of those are in the video description or here on YouTube. I'd greatly appreciate that. And we have one super chat that came in over here by Harry Serpanos. Thank you so much, Harry. Throws in $10 and he says, thanks for this great video and Happy New Year, DPH. Well, Happy New Year to you, Harry Serpanos. Thank you for all your continued support, brother. I really appreciate that. Okay. And then let me just check the Dono chat here and nothing on the Dono chat. All right. Well, let's continue on here with our stream. And this is Sean Ryan and Sean Webb on the C.I.A. funds remote viewing program.
In 1958, a company known as Monroe Industries began funding a research project where they were studying accelerated learning through practical environmental changes. Well, as a result of their findings, in 1971, the research project actually expanded, and what's now known as the Monroe Institute was founded. Now, what exactly is accelerated learning through practical environmental changes. Well, essentially what the Monroe Institute is doing is they are studying and developing psychic type abilities. Now, a lot of you probably think, oh, this is it's kind of out there. Well, you might want to know that the Central Intelligence Agency has actually funded and invested a very significant amount of money into the Monroe Institute to develop remote viewers. Now, here today on Sean Ryan Show, I have an ambassador of the Monroe Institute. He's a good friend of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't yet, please head over to Apple and Spotify. Leave us a review. Tell us how we're doing. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Many of you already know this. We have a ton of raw reels. We see you guys taking our content, repurposing it. Made it easy for you. There's a link below in the description. It's got tons of raw reels for you. You can download them for free. Do whatever you want with them. Monetize them. Make money. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome my good friend, Sean Webb, to the Sean Ryan Show. Cheers. Sean, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, sir. Good to be back.
So we did a previous episode talking about the dangers of AI and how it's going to manipulate the entire population, how to combat it, which was fascinating. We're recording a second episode just a couple hours after that. So anybody who has not seen that, I highly encourage you to go back and watch the previous episode with Sean. It is some of the most intriguing content that we've ever recorded here. And so today, so you're no stranger to the show. So today we're going to get into the Monroe Institute and remote viewing, how you got involved in that. What's the Monroe Institute? Talk about, you know, some of the stuff that CIA and the Monroe Institute have collaborated on, and when it comes to remote viewing, and we'll get into it.
Nice.
But yeah, I am super pumped about this episode as well. We took a long lunch to reset our brains from the previous one. We're recording 2 in one day, but because it's a separate episode, everybody always gets a gift, no matter how many times you come on the show. You got any ideas?
I don't know. Let me guess.
Come on. Come on.
Thank you, sir. Nice.
Yeah.
Vigilance Elite gummy bears.
I feel like I just gave you the exact same bag with the exact same Vigilance League gummy bears
Thank you for regifting it.
about 4 hours ago. So
Back to me.
yeah,
I'm gonna eat them. I'm gonna share them with my son.
you should.
Yeah.
You should. I'll give you some extra ones.
Nice.
Since we're doing
Appreciate it.
One thing I want to say is I know at the beginning of this, they talk about, he did a stream on artificial intelligence. I had a conversation. I have a friend who's sort of in that business, and he was talking to me last night. We were all meeting up for the celebration of one of our mutual friends getting engaged. And he was talking about how he met with one of the leaders in artificial intelligence, works for Google, worked for help with Chat GPT, worked with another organization. And he was talking about how this gentleman's almost like an AI when you talk to him. But my friend is Christian. And he said in their private conversation, which obviously not going to disclose any names here, that the gentleman told him, quite frankly, that the AI is it's about your soul. That what this whole world with technology, basically what we talk about here, you guys already know. But he said this guy wasn't even, Christian necessarily, but he's come to the conclusion based on the research he knows what's going on privately that the public isn't aware of, that this is about the entrapment of your soul and a sort of giving your soul away in submission to this sort of transhumanist agenda. So I'm out of breath because I ran down to grab a Topo Chico. So it's very interesting that my friend, who I highly trust and is in some of these highfalutin circles, he said, yeah, I was speaking with this guy, and he quite clearly described how this stuff is really going to lead into a war on the human soul. And so I just wanted to highlight that because that was one of my conversations last night with some friends.
2 episodes. But anyways, digging into, I've been very interested in the topic of remote viewing and the Monroe Institute. I found out about the Monroe Institute several years ago, just kind of digging around at some stuff in remote viewing.
We got some super chats. I got to catch up on those. Mr. Mendoza throws in $2 and says, you're the man, DPH. You're the man, Mr. Mendoza. And God bless you and your family. Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you for the support. And AC throws in $2, says, UFO deception stream is funded. Yes, guys. Purchase, or if you wait, did somebody already sponsor that? I'm not sure. No, I'm not seeing it on my end. But if you guys, I would love for you guys to sponsor me doing a full breakdown of Father Spirit and Bailey's UFO deception and have a theological orthodox perspective on that topic. So if you guys would like that, maybe I should figure out a way in which I can come up with the sponsored stream and you guys can pool money together. Let me think about that. That'd be a really good idea. I know AC has mentioned that before, so I'll work on that. But if anybody personally wants to be generous enough to sponsor a stream, please do so. I'd be very appreciative. And I promise you it's going to be fascinating because there's not a whole lot of theological takes on UFOs, aliens, except for, oh, they're higher intelligence entities and they're going to come here to save us. Not quite. But anyways, I want to thank you, AC, for the support, brother. And William Magara throws in $5, says, catch your breath of life, please. Thank you very much. Yes, the breath of life. Thank you very much, William Margara, for your support. Really appreciate that. God bless you and yours. And Tommy Jones throws in $5. No comment. Thank you so much, Tommy Jones, for your support. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you very, very much. It does take a lot of time and effort to put some of these streams together. And I hope you guys enjoy the content. I hope you guys enjoy the research. It's so that it's more easy for you guys. If you want to dive into now these topics, hopefully these streams give you a basis. And now you can probably go deeper than I even did. But if you appreciate the research and you appreciate the effort I put in my streams, please support the work. Go to the website, become a member, send in super chats. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay, let's get back to it.
Seen some things. I won't go into it, but I've seen some things. Let's just say I've seen some things overseas. I've seen some people brought in, and or let me rephrase.
Oh, we got some super chats over on Dono Chat. I can't forget these. Really appreciate it. Gentleman named Arc Builder throws in 4 $7.50 super chats. First one, Arc Builder says, before I found orthodoxy, I was interested in astral projection. I had minor success in exiting my body and had some interesting visions during this time. I was researching for a church to call home, albeit Protestant at the time. Next super chat. Arc Builder says, one day, engaging in this practice, I came in contact with an angel of light. It said some interesting things and told me to do things. Afterwards, thinking the experience was quite strange, I did not do what it said. Next comment. For whatever reason, I quit the practice, and after a time, I started to be harassed psychically via sleep paralysis. I would be awoken in the middle of the night, and when I would try to go back to sleep, I would hear voices. Next super chat. Once I found orthodoxy months after this experience, reading Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, got that right here, Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, and learning about prelest and the Jesus prayer, I was able to dispel the harassment. Glory to God for delivering me from my folly. Well, Arc Builder, that is glory to God, man. That's wonderful to hear. I know so many of us went down the wrong path. You know, for me, psychedelics. I never really got into the remote viewing or astral projection, never really had that much success with it. I did have one remote viewing like experience on a high dose of LSD, but I can't say it was remote viewing. It was very local. It was like my consciousness sort of went out of my body and I could view things like around my immediate area or in different parts of the room or something like that. But it's scary. It opens you up to the noetic realm. It opens you up to demonic activity. There's no doubt about that. And if you are somebody out there that's experiencing psychic torment, I highly recommend first learning the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, please have mercy on me, a sinner. And if you are being bombarded with like demonic mental images, I like to say, Lord, rebuke you. The Lord rebukes you, Satan. And then I'll say the Jesus prayer. And that has helped me before. So those are just small little tools in your spiritual tool belt. If you do feel like you're encountering demonic entities, say, the Lord rebukes you, Satan, or in the name of Jesus Christ. And then I like to say the Jesus prayer. And I'll tell you, that has worked for me personally. And if that might work for you guys, I highly recommend it. So anyways, we got another super chat here on YouTube. System Blower throws in $5, says, DPH, I'd be curious to hear your opinion on Sasquatch. Well, Sasquatch, I don't know exactly how that topic got brought up, but my opinion on Sasquatch is I'm not, it could be, I wouldn't be surprised if it is potentially a sort of large ape-like structure. Although, again, I take a very biblical worldview. So the idea that some entity evolved from chimpanzees and through the various hominids, I'm skeptical of that myself. I don't believe in macroevolution, but I definitely believe that reality is nothing like we're told or educated or brought up to think it is. So therefore, I keep a lot of possibilities open. Could Bigfoot exist? Could Sasquatch exist? It's possible. I know many people in the Tennessee and Georgia area believe so. I know many people out west in the Pacific Northeast believe so. Could be this entity doesn't want to be seen. I don't know. But yeah, in regards to it coming from a great ape species, I don't believe so myself. But again, I keep all possibilities open because nothing is as it seems to be. So thank you so much, System Blower, for the $5 super chat. Truly appreciate you, man. God bless you. Okay, let's get back to the stream here.
That I haven't seen these things. I know people who I've worked with who've seen these.
Where they've used remote viewing for
Yes,
operations. Yeah,
and
it's effective.
It ever since that got put in my ear, I have just been intrigued by it. And been wanting to dive in, and I haven't. It's the Monroe Institute has been a topic on. I have a sheet of different topics that I'm very interested in that I want to interview people about, and on the same sheet is a list of names. It's like a dream list of who I want to interview.
Yeah,
Monroe Institute and remote viewing has been on there. It was one of the first things I put on the list, and then we had a conversation, and about somebody else, who you were prompting me to kind of get on the show, and I hope that happens. And then we got into a detailed conversation, and I was like, hey, you got to get in here. We got to do this. We got to do this.
Yeah.
And so thank you for coming, man.
Thanks for having me back, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's I know this one's just going to be just as.
I love this topic.
Me too. So let's just get right into it. What is the Monroe Institute?
So the Monroe Institute is one of the, if not the premier research institutes for consciousness expansion. And on the East Coast, at least, if not in the country. Now, that begs the question, okay, so what is consciousness? And consciousness is that place within us that we observe from. It's a separate space from our minds because Like if we talked about the last episode, we talked about one characteristic, one phenomenon of consciousness versus our mind's knowledge. If we can take our consciousness and see what our mind is doing with our emotions and stuff like that, see our mind in operation, that proves that consciousness is separate from our mind. And so we're not exactly sure. We don't have a complete definition of what consciousness is. No one agrees on the definition.
Again, that's total speculation on his part. Yeah, nobody knows what consciousness is, but nobody knows what the mind is. And so to even make the claim that the mind is separate from consciousness, how can you actually make that claim? So again, I just want to be a critical voice as we move through this conversation, because this gentleman is knee deep in the Monroe Institute and all about remote viewing and whatnot. So claiming that, well, consciousness is separate from the mind based on what exactly? Now, again, he's probably referring back to this where they talk about it. But again, if consciousness is separate from the mind, who exactly is doing the remote viewing and observing XY details? Clearly the mind is to some degree. And so that's where I think orthodoxy and understanding that we have a noetic dimension of ourselves that's in the same realm of the angels and the demons, that makes a lot more sense because it's outside space-time. Your imagination is outside space-time. Okay.
The definition of consciousness. There are a lot of scientists out there that say consciousness is an emergent property of the complex system of our brains, and if our brains weren't there, we wouldn't have consciousness. And while that's true to a point, it doesn't necessarily say that consciousness is just in our brains. And I feel that the evidence that science is putting forward is that consciousness is actually out beyond our bodies, as well as something that we experience through our bodies. But when you reach out of your body into consciousness, you can do things like remote viewing and to see into the future, to discern information, which, by the way, comes from a study that was done 90 times in 33 different independent labs in 14 different countries that showed human beings can literally look into the future regarding a task that they're doing now. Well, expansion out into that consciousness is that practice of taking your mind and going out beyond your body to find out the cool things that you can do with it, and the cool things that you can experience with it, and the new things that you can learn, and the ways that you can use it for things like remote viewing. And so Monroe is that place that helps develop technology to help humans expand that consciousness out beyond their body and do really cool things with it. They have, they invented this Hemi-sync technology that everybody's talking about. They're the place that the CIA had that report out on the internet that was, popular on social media just recently of, the gateway tapes and the gateway protocol. They invented that. And that's what the government was using and experimenting with and researching regarding expansion of consciousness, using the human's innate ability to reach out beyond the body into consciousness to do cool stuff. That's what Monroe is.
Are they just into... I shouldn't say just, but is the focus remote viewing, or is there other aspects of consciousness that they're researching as well?
There are other aspects. They're number one in remote viewing because of their history of helping to develop a training program for the CIA and military industrial remote viewers that they developed the program for. They trained the people in the government who were remote viewers for a number of years before they actually had their own program set up internally. So that's kind of their pedigree and their history, is being the top place that trained all the remote viewers and put together a training program that allowed for people to do that kind of cool stuff. But then they branched out into other stuff, like Bob Monroe, who started the Monroe Institute, who's no longer with us. He was interested in all kinds of cool stuff and the utilization of technology to expand consciousnesses in multiple places. So now they got courses on how to reach out and communicate with extraterrestrial entities, like, some crazy fringe stuff. But they also have other stuff like how to train yourself for potentially having out-of-body experiences and extending your consciousness out to go see things, not in a remote viewing fashion, but to go see other places and other things that aren't local to your body consciousness. And they've got all kinds of stuff. And they do some, it's almost like a philanthropy or an outreach to spirits, one of their programs reaches out to lost souls that haven't found their way to their final destination after their death. They're confused about, where they are and what happened, and yada, yada, yada. They lost their life suddenly and they're just wandering around, and they have a program that's designed to help go out and reach those folks and lead them into a place where they can, finally get to their final destination. So
Oh boy, we're going to be pausing quite frequently through this conversation. So a lot of interesting stuff there. I loved AC's comment, shots for every time he says cool. We're off to a great start. I know somebody's going to be already tipsy. He said cool quite a few times, but so they're talking about contacting extraterrestrial entities, right? If you guys saw Tucker Carlson, I know Jay just talked about it the other night in one of his streams. Tucker Carlson has come out recently, and I'm not saying Tucker, people always say, dude, Tucker Carlson, where's the red bracelet? Okay. All right. I get it. I'm aware. My point is Tucker Carlson was recently talking about extraterrestrials and conversations he's had with people in the know. And I've highlighted this on like 2 previous streams, and that they have always been here, that they're not coming from they're not extraterrestrials coming from other parts of the universe, that these entities have always been here. And it's because if you read Father Seraphim Rose, or if you've read Father Spirit and Bailey, or if you're an Orthodox Christian, they're ultimately demons. And so he's talking about, oh yeah, they contact spirits who haven't found their home yet and helps them get to heaven or wherever. What? Dude, no. Again, you can tell this guy's not as serious. Now, he's very serious in the sense that he's participating in all these different things. But in regards to a serious philosophical thinker that's actually keeping things in their correct categories, not so much. He, as somebody highlighted, he's made massive metaphysical claims without justification, as which I'm sure somebody, if I was speaking about orthodoxy, would also claim. But at least I'm coming from a coherent worldview. So this guy talking about contacting spirits and extraterrestrials. They got all these really cool programs, bro. Yeah, you got to check it out. Yeah, these are demons. And as I've laid out in the opening monologue, this is about a spiritual connection with these entities. Oh my gosh. Whoa. Okay. AC. Whoa. I got it right here. AC just sponsored the stream on the UFO deception. Everybody give a major thank you to AC. AC just sponsored a stream on the UFO deception. Thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate that. Oh man. And AC is just a phenomenal supporter. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you, bro, for all the support you've done. Really appreciate that. So, yeah. Thank you, AC. Really appreciate it. Anyways, let's continue further now and listen to Sean Webb talk about the really cool stuff they're doing at the Monroe Institute.
it's like, and there's science up there that helps validate a lot of what they're doing in the physical realm, to say there's evidence that proves that this stuff is effective. There's evidence. And like in the case of Joe McMoneagle, who was remote viewer #1 for the Army Intelligence and CIA program that they put together, his evidence is irrefutable. Like, that's on government record that he did all this stuff and was able to go to other places from his living room in Virginia and then out an entire nuclear sub program for the Russian military, where he was the only one in the room who drew the sub with all these characteristics, and then it proved to be completely accurate. And he drew it from his living room in Virginia.
That is the most remarkable. When we spoke on the phone,
Yeah.
and you told me about that, that is the most remarkable remote viewing piece of information I've ever heard.
That's not even his best one, but it's pretty impressive. You want me to tell a story?
Not yet. We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. I want to stick with the Monroe Institute, Bob Monroe.
Yeah.
And how long has the Monroe Institute been around?
Since the 60s, I believe.
Since the 60s?
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in what you know. So the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and the Monroe Institute collaborated. A substantial amount of money was poured into the Monroe Institute to research. Is it research and develop, or did it start with research with remote viewing?
Well, the story that I got on the origin of Monroe Institute was that Bob Monroe was just simply interested in trying to figure out what technologies could assist with consciousness expansion. And he put together some programs, and all they had were gateway experiences back in the day. And
what is a gateway experience?
So the gateway is Bob's method of introducing binaural frequencies to where, for instance, you have 100 hertz in one ear and 104 hertz in the other ear. You can hear them both, but you can't hear 4 hertz. Normally it's below our audible level. But if you put two signals in your ears, right and left, that have a difference of 4 hertz, your brain then starts activating in a way to try to resolve that. And it turns on things because that's specifically right in the delta and theta transition area. And it can turn on experiences in your mind that would not normally be turned on in your consciousness. And so it gives you different experiences of consciousness. And so he started to experiment with that kind of technology. And that program, the Gateway, was introducing people into different levels of consciousness where you could experience deeper levels of concentration aided by the technology that they were putting in headphones, right? And so there's this guy, Skip, who was instructed to put together the remote viewing program for the military and CIA because they were getting reports that Russia was doing the same thing, that they were using psychics to look inside the secrets of the United States. So they needed to do an analysis of what kind of risk they were talking about and whether the United States should also investigate that type of technology.
Russia's doing this too.
Yeah, Russia was doing it at the time, and we were getting reports about it.
So they were ahead of us on this.
Yeah.
Is anybody else doing this that you're aware of?
From what I understand, although no one would admit it, every major country in the United States is implementing this type of program. Or excuse me, every major country in the world is implementing this. Like every first world nation is implementing this in their intelligence communities.
Wow.
Yeah, but no one wants to talk about it because, first of all, it's woo-woo crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And second, you don't want to identify your best viewers because, for instance, like Joe was attempted assassinated 3 times.
Hey, you know what? People listening right now that think this is woo-woo, do a Google search, do a DuckDuckGo search, do a whatever the hell you want search, and just Google Monroe Institute, CIA, and this shit's going to come up.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there you go. For all of you people that still believe in, that you got to hear it from a government source.
Yeah.
Which I can't believe, whatever. But there it is. It's right there.
Yeah. I mean, they invested millions of dollars in Monroe. Skip, their old program director for remote viewing, came down and was just researching, trying to figure out what a training program might look like for a remote viewer. How do you expand somebody's consciousness, or how do you increase their level of psychic abilities? This is crazy stuff that they were investigating back then, but they wanted to make sure they weren't investing money in a bad way, or they weren't wasting it on charlatans, that type of thing. So he would go out to these places and investigate them. And Bob basically took him around, gave him a tour, but put him in a radio shielded room with a pair of headphones on, started playing some tones in his ears, and Skip started floating up out of his body. So he thought that was pretty interesting. And so he put Monroe on a short list of places to investigate after he identified some folks who could possibly be good remote viewers. And so then he devised the idea that he said, okay, so we're looking for folks in the intelligence community. How do we find, who might be the psychics? And he looked for folks who were in their jobs longer than they should be. Because he thought, just as a common sense perspective, if these people are tuned into something extra, it's going to be the folks who are surviving longer in a shorter life expectancy job because they're making the right choices at the right times to stay alive. And it just so happened that Joe McMonigal, who was remote viewer number 1, he had spent 14 years in the field as an operative. And he was in a job that the life expectancy was 20 months. And he'd spent 14 years in that job. So they yanked him in and started interrogating him to ask him to, see if he was a double agent and was getting fed information on the other side. And when they figured out he wasn't, they sent him to Stanford Research Institute for testing, where Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, which I'm sure those names will ring some bells for folks who are interested in extraterrestrial stuff, because Hal's at the top of that chain as well. Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ were developing a program to try to test remote viewers, and they sent Joe McMoneagle out there, and he tested off the charts. He nailed every one of their tests except for one, and he got a second place result on the last one.
What are some of these tests?
So basically the tests were, we have a target, you don't know who it is, and that target, through a double-blind process, has been instructed to go to a location. The target doesn't know where the target's a person. The target doesn't know where the location is until they're handed the envelope, tell them to go there. The targets have been randomized and put in envelopes, and then a dice gets rolled for a randomization to select where they're going. And the two people are never in the same room. They don't know each other. The remote viewer goes in a radio shielded room that's separated in a different building. And the target, randomized location, they get the envelope, they open it up, they go there. And so then it's the job of the remote viewer to say, okay, your target is at a location. Tell us about the location. And that's it. That's all they get. So then the remote viewer goes into a little bit of a meditation to clear their mind. And Joe's explanation of remote viewing is like, you imagine a cardboard door in front of you and you poke a hole in it and you don't see the whole picture, but you start to see a little bit of it. And you get the little pieces of information about things. And he started drawing what he saw on the target location. And he would nail, and now here's the process of how a separate viewing gets viewed. It's a separate judge who isn't connected with the experiment at all, except he's judging the remote viewing versus multiple targets that could exist. So he doesn't know where the target is either. He gets a randomized selection inside a stack of targets. And he has to take the drawing that the remote viewer has made and the information that the remote viewer has written down, like any smells or any sounds or any images or what's, the shape of a building or something like that. And then he or she has to take that remote viewing drawing, and then match it to a number of things that are before him. So he doesn't know the target. He doesn't know the location. He doesn't had contact with the remote viewer or the target. He just takes a drawing and matches it to a bunch of stuff on a wall. And he says, okay, this looks the most like this. It's got this pattern that he drew. It's got this smell of this flower that's in the picture. It's got, whatever it is. And then at that point, you're graded. And if that independent judge has taken the remote viewer's information and matched it to the correct target, that's a first place finish, first place result. And Joe hit first place result after first place result after first place result. And they sent him to Meade at that point to start the remote viewing program. And now he didn't really believe it. He thought this whole thing was an operation on him. Like, how gullible is this guy? Like, can we string him along? How long is he going to be strung along for that we're telling him he's psychic? Although he kind of knew he was psychic because he'd get hints about operations in the jungle, and he was all throughout Vietnam, and he's gone to 110 countries. He's a legit field operative. So he's getting drops. He's going in and talking to tribal chiefs, making treaties and stuff like that. Like, he's a legit operator.
All right,
As a parent, my number one...
Skipping the advertisements here. But it seems like we're all on the same page here in regards to what's going on. It's clearly all related to demonic encounters and demonic entity. And that's why Hal Puthoff, again, partner with Russell Targ at the Stanford Research Institute, are all tied into it together. And so, as somebody mentioned, how do you know what's what? Well, they don't. And are they all demons? Well, couldn't we contact angels? Well, angels don't contact you that way. And angels are obviously messengers of the Lord. And so they would all be representative of Jesus Christ. And so one way, again, we're taught to by Paul in the epistles is to test the spirits. claim, talk about Jesus Christ, see how their response is. That's the easiest way to see whether a spirit is good or bad.
So he gets sent to Meade, and he doesn't quite believe that, he doesn't understand what this remote viewing is all about yet, because he's brand new to the program. He's brand new to this experiment that they're trying to put together. So he tries to test himself on Skylab in 1978. I think it's coming down from, this is the first USS space station base. Like the International Space Station, there was a Skylab version of it back in the late 70s, except it ran out of juice and they couldn't use it anymore. And it was going to come down out of orbit and fall down and break apart, but not quite burn up. And so they were really worried that major chunks of this, like refrigerator sized stuff, was going to come down and land on somebody's head. Telemetry wasn't what it is today. So they had no idea where this thing was coming down or when it was coming down. They just knew it was coming down. It was in a decaying orbit, and eventually it was going to enter the atmosphere and could land literally anywhere on the planet. And they didn't know. And so he was like, all right, I'm going to test myself on this. He said, if I have an opportunity to fail, this is it. Because no one knows where this thing is coming down. And so I'll just go into my remote viewing process that I'm being taught how to do this, go into a meditation, see if I can figure this out. And he came up with a date, and he came up with a location. So this, as far as the scientists were concerned, they were like, okay, this is going to land somewhere. This is going to re-enter somewhere in this 6-month time frame is the best guess.
What year is this? Do you know?
It's like, I think it's like 78. Yeah, so it's back then before they had a bunch of awesome telemetry to know exactly where something was in space. Now they're tracking all kinds of things that are this big in our orbit.
So they
Okay, just want to stop right there. We had a super chat come in over on the Streamlabs. Again, if you guys would like to show some love and support for the stream and the research and my work, I'd greatly be appreciative. Again, major thank you to AC for sponsoring our stream on the UFO deception. Really appreciate you, brother. Storm the Cat throws in $10, says, cool stream. One time I had this weird experience where it was like I was outside of my body. I could literally see myself standing there. Yeah, I had that experience too back in the old psychedelic days, but I never went to the extent of contacting entities like, again, some of these stories regarding these professional remote viewers, whatever professional means. But yeah, interesting how it always leads back to aliens, and in the Esalen Institute, it always leads back to some homoerotic stuff. So again, somebody talked about always leads back to butt stuff. I'm not sure why, but maybe we do know. Frankie D throws in $10. Thank you so much, Frankie D. He says, bro, I'm turning old today. Big 3-1. Time to grow up, I guess. Glory to God. I hope you had a blessed holiday season. Christ is born. Glorify him. Absolutely. Well, hey, the big 3-1 isn't too old, my man. So don't worry. You're not that old. I'm 34. I'll be 35 this year. I can't believe that. We were talking about that last night with some friends. 35. I'll be 35 in 2024. So, hey, we're all in the same boat. And God bless you, brother, and everything that you do to support my work. I truly appreciate you, Frankie D. We got another one that came in. Arxachin7 throws in $2 and says, thank you for all your hard work, DPH. Much love. Well, thank you, brother, for your support. I really appreciate that, and it goes a long way. Thank you so much, man. God bless you and yours. And yeah, happy birthday to Frankie D, man. Happy birthday. Congrats, Frankie D. That's awesome. And, just keep on keeping it on, man. Everything's going to work out. Just keep Christ as the center of your focus, man. I have no doubt. And I appreciate all your support, bro. And then Justin throws in $5 over on the Dono chat with no comment. No comment. Well, thank you so much, Justin, for the $5 super chat. And again, I wanted to thank Ark Builder for his generous super chat over on Dono chat. And glory to God, Ark Builder, that you're able to find your way back to the church. It's so true for so many of us. So glory to God for that. And thank you all for the support. All right, let's get back to it.
They have a 6-month window.
Yeah,
They're
basically.
like it's going to land somewhere. Do they have a hemisphere?
No.
They just know it's going to hit the Earth in a 6-month time frame. Okay.
Yeah, because when it comes down, will definitely determine where it lands on the planet, right? If it goes an extra 5 minutes in orbit, well, it could be another continent because of the speed that it's going, right? It's up in orbit at like 17,000 miles an hour or whatever. So, so he wrote down a date, and he walked up and put a pin on the map. And the pin on the map happened to be in Australia. And the date he missed by 6 days. So the date was close, but the pin that he put on the map, he missed the location of reentry by 30 miles, which statistically is 1 in 6,656,000. It's like hitting the lottery numbers on your first try to be able to identify where Skylab came down. If you were standing on the location where he put the pin in the map, you could look up and literally see Skylab breaking up in front of you.
Wow.
So Hal Puthoff said it was the best remote viewing of a future event that he'd ever seen, and I think still since, being able to identify where this thing was going to come down out of orbit. And so at that point, Joe thought, okay, well, maybe I'll stick with this remote viewing thing for a while.
What was the event that sparked CIA's interest in all of this?
Well, I think they were just motivated to try to investigate whether this had any merit for intelligence gathering and for operational information.
Was it Russia?
Yeah.
Russia's capability with remote viewing is what sparked the United States Central Intelligence Agency to start looking into this.
Yeah.
How much money did they dump into this program?
We don't know exactly. Joe personally told me over a lunch, millions. So more.
Again, remember when we were reading from this book of the Esalen Institute, just the Stanford Research Institute in regards to their work on remote viewing was given over $20 million from the US Army, NASA, CIA, and one of the other departments. I forget exactly. So that's just the Stanford Research Project, or the Stanford Research Institute. So you can imagine over the years, I wouldn't be surprised if there's over hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects.
More than one, officially. I don't know how many millions, but it was very important for the United States to be able to investigate whether or not this had intelligence capabilities and what level of benefit that could be gleaned from investigating this type of because they started getting amazing viewings out of Joe right away. And it's like, okay, well, how many amazing LeBron James of consciousness are there to say, this person can sit in a room and tell me what's going on at a location and potential future events? Because some of the remote viewers that the CIA used were able to produce the effects of nuclear tests that had been secret until the remote viewer said this is going to happen, be able to figure out whether it was going to be a success or a failure, because some of them were failures, and all the intelligence turned out to be correct. And so they were super interested. Joe McMoneagle never missed the location of a nuclear sub in his entire career, because he explains that there's a
Frankie D asked a good question. Again, happy birthday to you, brother. And thank you for everything you do. He said, do demons have the ability to influence chance? Well, like the instance of the object falling from the sky, I would say that doesn't influence free will. And so is it possible that demons that are entities that are not within space-time could have knowledge and give a remote viewer privy insight to that? Yeah, I think that's possible. Or where something is located? Yeah, I think that's possible. But in regards to the influence of free will, this is where I disagree with many of the people who are sort of subscribers to the simulation theory. And that is because of the document, page 25, which sort of insinuates a possibility to that framework. I do not believe that the future is predetermined. I do not believe that these remote viewers are accessing a predetermined future and these various entities can be insightful and help them. No, we have free will, and your free will matters and your choices matter. So I think when it comes to like locations of stuff or where things are at, or anything that's not involving direct human free will, yeah, I think they do have insight to that and they can project into the future. But when it comes to free human will, that's why the war is for your soul. The war is about destroying the image of God in you. And so I would say they can't influence. And that's why they're trying to influence us through our imagination and demonic images and demonic possession, is because they're moving us towards this organized plan that's leading towards the Antichrist. It's leading towards the inversion of the world. And that's why all of our sin is contributive to that effort. And our good efforts when we follow Jesus Christ is moving in the opposition to that. So Frankie D says, I thought demons could almost change the numbers on a dice roll. I don't know. I don't know. I'll leave that to a priest or a monk to lay that out. But my suspicion as an Orthodox Christian that they can't influence events that involve free will. So when it's talking about a future event that is totally oriented around particular minor choices or specific choices, I don't think they have access to that. But when in regards to maybe something that's already set in stone or something that's already built or where something's going to be, I think they can. So that's just my thoughts. But I could be wrong, Frankie D. But again, thank you, brother. Happy birthday to you. And thank you for all your support. Love you, man. Thank you. And we had a super chat come in from Bush Pan Down, throws in $2. It says, thank you for the UF alien research. God bless. Well, thank AC. AC sponsored the stream. AC made it happen. So thank you, AC. Thank you, everybody. Frankie D, Arc Builder, Justin, Blue Skittle. Thank you guys for all the support. Storm the Cat, Harry Serpanos. You guys are continual supporters of the stream, and I love you guys, and I support you. Truly, truly, truly. Thank you so much. Your support means so much. Thank you guys. All right. Enough with me. Let's get back to this.
There's a high level of entropy in a reactor for a sub, and that just glows like a big bright light in consciousness where those locations of those types of entropy events are. So if anyone ever needed to know, like they lost track of where a nuclear sub was for the Russians, they'd go into Joe's office and he goes, right here. And they'd check their sensors and boom, it would be there.
Well, since we're talking about nuclear subs and Joe McMoneagle, tell me the story.
Yeah. Well, the one that made everyone sit up and take notice and got him more funding for a large number of years was when there was a building that was identified by intelligence personnel that became the top priority for the National Security Council. It was the largest building under one roof in the world. And it was high in the Russian tundra near this large body of water. So they thought it might be a manufacturing facility for some type of military craft. And they weren't sure what it was. And everybody wanted to know what was going on inside the building because they had triple death wire fencing. In between all those, they had sentries with dogs, 24-hour site-to-site sentry circle around the property, trains coming in, dumping off raw materials 24/7, food coming in, food service for the people who were working inside the building, and no one knew what was going on inside the building. And so someone at the National Security Council meetings knew that they had a new psychic program down at Meade and sent the manila folder down to Fort Meade, and they handed it to Joe McMoneagle. The first thing they handed him was simply map coordinates. And they said, show us what you see here. And he came up with the building that they were concerned about. And he described the building, and they said, okay, you're on target. And then they gave him a picture of that building. And they said, tell us what's going on inside here. Now, the guys in the National Security Council and all the intelligence guys who were in the room came to the consensus that it was going to be some kind of troop carrier that they could probably transport over to the ocean because it was 4 or 5 blocks away from the ocean, but it was short enough to where they could transport something of medium size over to the ocean to get it into the water. But that was their best guess. Joe McMoneagle was the only person who came up with the result. He dropped into the building and he started viewing this thing, and he viewed it over a number of days and came up with a drawing and an explanation and technical specifications for a brand new submarine. And he said, this is the biggest submarine in the world by far. It's 1.5 times bigger than the next biggest sub. This is the brand new classification of Russian sub. And he came up with a number of very unique characteristics for that sub. And he said, it's not a cylinder. It's a cylinder that looks like it's cut in half, spread out, and then a flat part welded on the top and the bottom. And the U.S. engineers looked at that later after he sent it, and he said, that's impossible. It'd be crushed to depth. You know, it's highly unlikely, et cetera. But then he added the specifications. It's got a special drive propulsion system that I don't want to say too much about, but it's also got canted launch tubes, which means it can fire nuclear missiles on the run without having to stop, which could give us about 20 minutes warning that we're going to lose 1,200 cities. So this is a first strike weapon. And it's, by the way, if you've seen the movie Hunt for Red October, that submarine that they used in that movie was the sub that Joe McMoneagle outed. He said it's almost 2 football fields long, it's 75 feet wide, it's 7 stories tall. He drew, and he's got a video of this that he sent up to the National Security Council. He drew a diagram of the sub with its specifications, with its very interesting technical advancements that the United States didn't have on their subs. And he's got the original tape that he submitted to the NSC, and this has been declassified, so he can share it now. So this is the tape that he reported up to the NSC before the thing was launched, and proved him correct. But he sent all that up, and Robert Gates was the guy who is collecting all the information for the people, disseminating the information for the National Security Council. Didn't even let it through.
Really?
Yeah, because he's like, this came from a psychic. And they're like, yeah. And he's like, he looked at it, and he like looked at the report, and he's like, okay, the sub, the engineer said the sub can't survive at depth. It's way too big. He's the only guy who thinks it's a sub. It's not, they're not going to be able to roll this off into the water. There's no water there, and it's too big to transport over to the ocean. So he wrote total fantasy on top of the report and sent it back to Joe at Meade. Joe is not pleased. He's a little bit of an attitude, and he's a really good operative who's now just been put into this remote viewing thing where he's had some success in. And he's like, I know this is a sub. And so he took that total fantasy remark and he wrote under it. He went back into a meditation, and he looked at the sub again. He looked how far along was it, and he made an estimation of how long it was going to take to launch this thing. And he goes, yeah, well, your total fantasy launch is in 112 days. Send it back to Robert Gates at Meade, or at the Pentagon.
How did that go?
But you see, like, the decision of when it was going to be released was already a free will decision. And so I believe demonic entities, again, remote viewers, they can have access to this information, which has already been decided upon. But I want to highlight a few super chats that just came in. Again, thank you all so very much. Dean Lim 2 throws in $10 and says, I can't verify if remote viewing is accurate, but I can verify this remote super chat is true. I think he says, great 2024 DPH/COTEL. Well, thank you so much, Dean Lim 2. Really appreciate all your support, brother. God bless you. Thank you so much. And our brother, Frankie D, threw in another super chat over on the Streamlabs. Let me pull that up. Frankie D throws in $5, and he says, well, I imagine even if they could not directly intervene in the world, they would be the best network of intelligence there is. Absolutely. I absolutely believe that, which again, a la the UFO, aliens, our government being interested in all this remote viewing and astral projection research. Yeah, I think the demons have the ultimate sort of worldly intelligence that our rulers that be, the globalist elite, are interested in. Demons are not bound by walls as we are. I bet they could tell someone what was going on in a secret location. I totally agree with you, Frankie D. I totally agree with you. That's my personal opinion as well. So thank you so much, brother. Again, happy birthday to you. And we had one come in over on the Dono chat. Gorilla Biscuits throws in $4 and says, Happy New Year. God bless. Well, thank you so much, Gorilla Biscuits. Happy New Year to you and yours, and God bless. Thank you so much for the support. Really appreciate that. Okay, so let's get back. Now he's talking about Joe McMoneagle, which again we highlighted right here. Joseph McMoneagle. This is the guy that with his military intelligence, he was this head head remote viewer for the Stargate program, Stargate project, and he's talking about the gentleman we're watching, Sean Webb, is the instance in which Joe McMoneagle was able to remote view and know exactly when Russia's nuclear sub was going to be launched.
Well, Robert Gates has a little bit of an ego. The good news is someone at the National Reconnaissance Office picked up this piss and match, and they were curious. And so they tasked a satellite to do a flyover at 114 days from that date that he said 112 days. And they snapped pictures of the Red October submarine, 7 stories high, 75 feet wide, almost 2 football fields long, canted launch tubes, special propulsion, the whole thing. He nailed it all.
Are you serious?
Yeah. 2 cylinders separated with flat pieces in between, right next to a brand new in a brand new canal that they built right next to the building in from the sea, so they could roll it off into the water. So they built a canal in the 4 months that he said they were going to launch it in, and just dumped it into the canal right next to the building. So that was interesting. And they were 2 days into, they had all their hatches wide open because they were loading reactor cores and missiles 2 days into the process of loading missiles. So he nailed it to the day, including all the specifications, and no one believed him. And it was one of the greatest information gathering operations for any launch of any Russian equipment since and to this day.
I would imagine that sparked a lot of interest in remote viewing in Robert Gates, in Robert Gates's mind. Now, so what? And I'm sure a lot of other minds and organizations. So what happened after this?
So the fringe folks who were starting to investigate remote viewing and sending tasks down to Meade became most of the intelligence agencies in the United States government started overtasking the remote viewers down there. So they got crushed.
How many remote viewers were there?
There were a bunch. I mean, there were 4 or 5 that they had as a stable, and then they were trying out other individuals, bringing people in, letting people go, because they were like less effective. But it was a constant barrage of life or death situations. Tell us what you can see. These are special operations that are going live. Tell us which way we need to turn. What's going on? Somebody just got kidnapped. We got probably 18 hours before he's dead. Help figure out where he went. A lot of missing people and missing operators. To tell us where he is, we'll go get him. And that was taxing on a lot of those remote viewers, and they got burned out pretty quick. And so that's where Monroe Institute stepped in to help provide a training program that could give them a faster cool down and a deeper focus on being able to get good information in a quicker time, so that they didn't have to spend so much time prepping and meditation to be able to get in viewing on something.
How long are these guys spending in meditation?
Well, it depends on the viewer, but you could do like in the early days. I think Joe told me he was spending, 45 minutes to an hour to try to figure out a place where he could get to where he could get a good bit of information. But in his later years, after he was practiced, and this is why plasticity matters here, where your brain changes in form and function to help you do, like you play the piano, and then all of a sudden you get better at playing the piano because your brain just gets used to it and says, okay, I need to play the piano better. Shooting baskets, you get that muscle memory. Well, that's your brain changing to help you shoot those baskets better and just drain the 3. Doing crossword puzzles, your brain will change in form and function to help you do the crossword puzzles faster. Well, it turns out remote viewing is the same way. Later in his life, when he was doing remote viewing, like for one example, he got a call one night when he was in Las Vegas from the local sheriff who was looking for a missing child. And the mom thought the child was with dad, and the dad thought the child was with mom, and it's getting dark when they figured out the child is missing, and it's in Virginia wilderness and in the county in which Joe lived. And there's wild animals, and it's getting cold at night, and the kids may not make it. He got a call in the middle of the night by the sheriff who's like, let's get the psychic on the phone. And Joe immediately picked up the phone, closed his eyes for like 5 seconds, and then basically told the sheriff, he goes, send your deputy out this road to this particular location. Have him stop the car, get out of the car, get his compass out. And at 318 degrees on his compass, I want you to walk 1,209 steps. Stop, call the child's name out, and he will respond. And that was like within 5-10 seconds of getting the call and asking, what the details were. And then he gave a reading. And so he goes back to bed thinking, okay, hopefully they're going to find the kid. If they follow his directions, they will. About 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, you get another call in his hotel room, and he's pissed because it's ringing the phone in the middle of the night again. So he gets up, grabs the phone. Hello, Joe. We sent our officer out there to the spot where you said, and he pulled out his compass. But this officer just said he got back from training last week regarding missing children, and he said the statistics are that kids 10 and under will not walk up a hill when they're lost. But he's looking at his compass reading, and it goes directly up a steep hill. What do you want us to do? And his answer was immediate. It's like, do what I told you to do. Click. And so then another 5-10 minutes goes by, and he gets another call, and he picks up the phone a little softer this time because I think he had a feeling that they found him. He's like, did you find him? And she goes, yes, Joe, thank you very much. Good night. And so the officer, against his training, went up the hill, 1,209 steps, followed the directions, stopped where he was, called out the child's name, and the kid answered him because he had walked up the hill to get to a cabin, and he was sleeping on the back porch sofa of a cabin that was deserted at the time, but it had a light on. And he was a 5-year-old kid, and he said, my daddy said if I ever got lost, walk to the closest light and stay there. And so he went up the hill and was sleeping on the back porch of that cabin. And Joe sent that state trooper up the hill, called out his name, and the kid woke up and answered him.
Wow.
And it took literally 5 seconds for him to get the original viewing and then all that stuff's like documented, right? I mean, these aren't, bullshit, made up stories. Like, he's got legitimate government records, and he was awarded the Legion of Merit after retiring for all of the stuff and all the aid that all the operational intelligence that he provided that saved people's lives. So it's possible to reach out beyond your regular physiology and see things that aren't local to you, because consciousness is out beyond our body, and you just have to be able to project yours to see other places and other things. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you practice it, the better you can do it, and the more reliable it is.
As much as I want to keep talking about Joe McMoneagle,
yeah,
it's going to be where we have a collaborative effort here
yes,
to get him in the studio to tell his story, and I am very much hoping and praying that happens.
I just saw him because I just got back from Monroe Institute, and I think he wants to come on. We're going to try to figure out how to get that done. He doesn't travel so well, so maybe we have to figure something out. But he knows who you are and likes you and likes the show, and so that kind of helped. But he's a guy that when he calls the Pentagon picks up the phone and says, yes, Joe. So he's one of those untouchable guys. He's an amazing get. I'd love to have him come here and hang out and talk with you, because his stories are amazing, and he's the real deal. He's a national treasure of what he's done for the United States and United States intelligence with his abilities.
Well, we're going to do everything we can. So, and I really hope that happens. But you are now an official ambassador of the Monroe Institute. You've done some of this testing. You're getting into.
So, again, I'm not here to support Sean Webb or any stories that he's going to lay out. I hope that Sean Ryan does do an interview with Joe McMoneagle on these topics, but yeah, so I'm okay with, again, being skeptical. But the point is of this stream is that remote viewing is real, astral projection is real, and the whole point was to demonstrate how much funding the U.S. intelligence agencies and various departments in the military have funded these programs I believe, obviously, that there's demonic activity here. Somebody highlighted, well, how would the kid see the law? I'm not here to justify any story, but we weren't told that the child was in the same place that the cop's car was. But again, I'm not here to justify any of these stories. I don't know Sean Webb. I'm very skeptical. As we said, he already has a very new agey worldview that is not really rooted in any sort of deep philosophical understanding. But anyways, I digress. The stream's almost over. So once this video ends, we're going to wrap things up. But I just wanted to tell you all again, thank everybody for the support. And yeah, so let's kind of end on this last leg here, where he's going to talk a little bit more about promoting the Monroe Institute, which again is this entity right here that's founded by Robert Monroe, Hemi-sync, binaural beats. He's dead, but his institute is sort of one of the leading places for research with out-of-body experiences, non-local consciousness, that type of thing. So anyways, here we go. He's going to go on this spiel about the Monroe Institute, and then we're going to wrap things up.
Not Monroe Institute. You're getting into remote viewing.
Yeah.
And so how did you get involved with the Monroe Institute?
It was in my research to try to figure out what consciousness was and how it worked that I ran into a documentary that included Joe in it called Third Eye Spies. And it was about how Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff put together the remote viewing programs for the government back in the day. And it was the story about the origin and what they did to try to create a remote viewing training program and testing and put a scientific method behind the whole thing. And then they, in the latter part of that documentary, they interviewed Joe and had him on there and told a couple of stories about his accolades. And it was through that I found out he was still alive, that he was still teaching remote viewing. And I was like, that's amazing. I want to go meet this guy and see what this is all about, because if I'm writing a book about consciousness and I believe that it goes on beyond the body, I want to go meet a guy who's actually proven it. And so I got signed up for his course and went up to Monroe, took his remote viewing course. And that was amazing, by the way, because not only did he go through the double-blind protocol and how to clear your mind and what you're looking for and how to just take whatever your mind is giving you and put it on the paper and don't judge it and don't name it. Just take the raw information, the raw data, and put it down, and then let somebody else judge if you've hit the target or not. Through that process, people who are brand new to remote viewing in the class were blowing their own minds on how well they could see things they had no idea about. Because you got to understand, when you go up there to do a remote viewing course, all they give you is a reference number. They give you a blank sheet of paper and they say, B43, go. That's it. No clues.
What is B43?
It's the fucking number on the envelope of the image that you're supposed to look into the envelope and see what's in there.
So when day one, week one,
yeah,
the Monroe Institute for Remote Viewing, you get an envelope with a photograph.
You don't even get the envelope. You can't touch it. They say they've got a stack of envelopes up front, and then they say, okay, not everybody gets the same one. They say your name, and then they give you a reference number out of their stack of envelopes is up the front. And so you get a letter and a number, or just sometimes a number, or just sometimes a couple of letters, or whatever it is, and that's it. That's all you get. And then you start to close your eyes and you start to envision, what are you getting from a hearing sensation, a taste sensation, what is it that your mind is giving you at that moment, and you try to record it on the piece of paper. And that's it. That's all they give you is just a reference number.
Without any of these technologies, this is bare bones.
Yeah.
No frequency work, nothing.
Yeah. Because they start with just a blind read, and then they start to implement the technology of the signals in the headphones and stuff like that, so you can see the difference, see how it improves your ability to view and your results, etc. But from go, they just give you a number and they say start drawing.
So walk me through this process.
So
you get your reference number.
Yep, you get your reference number, and then you're supposed to quiet your mind and see if you can clear whatever's going on in your mind for a moment, the thoughts, and then you look for, show me the target that's associated with B43 or whatever your reference number was. And then your mind starts to do whatever it does. And whatever it gives you, you try to record that and you try to remain on your target. Like you don't think about lunch tomorrow. You don't think about conversation you had with somebody earlier in the day. You don't think about, whatever it is that your mind wants to go to. You're focusing on the target. You want the information about the target. If your mind starts to wander, you just say target. And whatever your mind gives you, that's the remote viewing. And sometimes you'll hit it, sometimes you won't, but you draw.
See, again, what we talk about with mental images, the noetic realm, demonics, demons giving you mental images. This is the basis of the spiritual life as an Orthodox Christian. And he's telling you, well, remote viewing is not exactly how you would think. We kind of go into these meditative states and then you say target, and then it's just the images that come in your mind. Exactly. Getting people deeper and deeper into this disassociation with their body and their mind or their spiritual self. Again, everything that we've already been talking about through the entire stream.
Whatever it is that your mind gives you.
So what was your mind giving you?
My first remote viewing ever, which convinced me that it was real. I was in my check unit doing my drawing, and this is a little place, a little cubby hole that you go and sit so you can be by yourself and focus on your own thoughts so that no sounds distract you, etc. No light comes in if you don't want it. I flashed in front of my mind flashed in front of my vision with my eyes closed. The idea of a round spider web is the best thing that I could, and your brain will equate some things to be as close as, like whatever it shows you, it'll be close to, but maybe not exactly what it was. So I just saw like a spider web, and I saw multiple lines going out from the center, and I saw multiple lines connecting the lines that were going out. So it kind of looked like a spider web. But then in the middle, there was a big blotch of opaque material, whatever it was, I don't know. So basically I drew like a spider web with a big old dot in the middle of it, scribble, scribble, scribble. And that's all that I got. So we go back down after doing our drawings to the room where they handed us our target. And the first target, everybody does the same because they have it on a slide that they're going to show. So you come in there and they say, okay, you're going to be remote viewing, and they give you a reference number, but everybody gets the same reference number. You go off and you draw whatever it was. And then they show you, everyone, in the next slide what it is. And the next slide that they showed was, and they have a standard database that they pull from. These are images that are used for testing remote viewing, and they're all randomly selected usually. So no one can cheat. No one knows what's going to come up, that type of thing. But this one is the first one they gave us. So they had it on the slide. And the next thing that they showed us was a white background with black pen illustration of an old Ferris wheel from the 1920s that had a number of lines going out from the center. And when the lines got too thick for the pen, the lines converged. There was a huge black dot where the pen lines all just kind of merged together into a bunch of ink. And I looked down at this spider web with this black dot in the middle of it. And it wasn't exactly, because I drew a spider web because that's what was presented to me in my mind. But it was a goddamn circle with a bunch of connecting lines and a big dot in the middle of it, just like the frame was.
What was what are you? What's going through your head at this point?
Holy shit! I'm freaking out. I'm going to remote viewing at Monroe, and I'm like, first of all, I don't expect to be able to do anything at all.
Yeah,
because I've never done it before. I don't know what happens here. I don't know anything about remote viewing. I'm just up here basically to meet this amazing guy. And so I'm not expecting anything. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. I don't even know if it's real. because, you know, I mean, who knows? Could this whole Joe McMoneagle thing be a complete disinformation campaign to try to lead foreign intelligence down the wrong road and have them waste time on psychics and all this other stuff going through my mind? And then I drew 80 to 90% of the first image, first try out of the gate. And I thought that was interesting. And then maybe that was just a lucky guess. And what happened after that, all throughout the week, is that I kept getting first place results, viewing after viewing after viewing. And again, it's the same process that they use where you get a randomized reference number that's unique to you. You go and you draw whatever you get. And then you're handing it to another person who's a judge who has to then take 4 images, random images, and say, okay, you're drawing best matches this thing. And I kept putting out drawings that would match the right one, because only one of the distractors on the paper would be the actual target. And they would have to say, this matches, because they didn't know which one it was, this matches this image. And that was the target, time after time. And I was just like, that's crazy. And
So
this is real.
What are these? One, how long did it take you to come up with the spider web?
Almost immediately. It was the first thing that flashed in when I closed my eyes, that spider web kind of like out of the darkness flashed in a white light in front of my face. It was like,
and that's it?
That was it.
That was big. And then you drew it, and that's it.
Yeah,
That's
well, it kept flashing. Like I kept, because I was doubting it.
Mhm.
Like I was like, bullshit, this isn't it. It's not a spider web.
You're like, all right, I'm just going to draw this spider web.
Yeah, basically.
Like total disbelief.
It wouldn't go away. It kept flashing in front of my face. I tried to draw up other stuff, which is a whole nother process you're not supposed to do, which I didn't know, but he taught us later. He's like, don't do that. Don't do this. You know, don't put any meaning to it. Don't put an analytical overlay that you think this is an apple or whatever. Just take the basic information that you're given, because, you know, the shape, although it might look like an apple to you, might be something else. So don't draw an apple if it kind of looks like an apple, but it's two separated C's that are opposite that kind of looks like an apple to you. Don't draw an apple. Just draw what you see, the two opposite C's, because it might be something else. So yeah, I tried to push it out and it wouldn't go away. And I was like, all right, well, this is wrong. Whatever.
Whatever. So that's it. He starts getting into advocating for average people's abilities to do all this stuff. That's kind of all that I really wanted to show you guys. And as I highlighted, you know, the whole idea is, as you guys are talking about the sort of demonic elements here, it's all about wanting to know, right? The promise of the serpent to Eve. And if we actually go back and look at, remember the CIA. So we have, this is the official document. Both of these are on the CIA.gov website. If we go to the Gateway program, remember the affirmation that they're supposed to say, the Gateway affirmation. I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand and experience, to know, to understand, and to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and those who follow me. Also, I deeply desire to help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, experience is equal or greater to my own. I may ask their guidance, demonic guidance, and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires. So again, encountering entities that can help you with your stated desires. So we get it. We get it. So guys, that's going to conclude my stream on an overview of the US Army Stargate project, the Esalen Institute, and the Stanford Research Institute, NASA funding, CIA funding, US Army funding, how this leads into the Gateway program, how this leads into Robert Monroe's research with Hemi-sync, binaural beats, and the construction of the Monroe Institute. And so I hope this stream was insightful for you guys. I hope you appreciate it. I want to thank all of you who supported the stream. Thank you so much. Thank you to Dark Lord and Tutu, Well Emmanuel, Thomas Aesthetics, Jessica D, First Person Q, Mendoza, AC for his very generous support, William Magara, Tommy Jones, System Blower, Arcs Cheon 7, Bushpan Down, Dean Lim 2, Frankie D, Storm the Cat, Harry Serpanos. Thank you all so much. And over on the Dono chat, thank you, Gorilla Biscuits. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Arc Builder. And thank you, Blue Skittle. I appreciate you all so very much. I wish you guys the absolute best in 2024. This is the beginning of a very interesting year, a year that none of us will forget. And I just want you guys to know, whatever happens, we're not alone. We have each other. Yes, we're not locally next to each other, but we get what's going on. We're privy to the insights, and we're followers of the one true Lord Jesus Christ. And he will give us eyes to see and ears to hear, and the Holy Trinity will protect us in these difficult times moving forward. And I just want to thank you all for the support. And that's going to do it. The next stream is going to be a sponsored stream on Freemasonry and its role in the revolutionary spirit, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Bolshevik Revolution. And so, with that being said, thank you all very, very much. And I'll be back probably Thursday, maybe Friday, depending on when I get all the research done. So, as always, until next time, God bless.